So, another year passes, and what's new about your home? I mean, maybe you did change that stinky carpet, or you finally got around to insulating the attic. You might even have invested in some bifold doors. Or maybe you built one of these. It's that time again. Time to seek out the Royal Institute of British Architects House of the Year.
That, of course, isn't structural glass.
Yes, it is. The judges have looked at hundreds of entries from the length and breadth of Britain to make up a long list for the 2018 prize that'll knock your socks off. Standing here is quite a monumental thing. From homes that are bespoke and finely crafted. Yes, that's a door. It's like the Crystal Maze. To houses that are thrustingly ambitious. You were egging them on then.
Absolutely.
The houses we profile will be cut down to a short list of just 7 before we find out in the final programme which is House of the Year 2018. And same as usual, you get to come along for a jolly good nosy. No questions asked. Of the long-listed houses we're looking at, I've taken it upon myself to separate them into 4 categories. Houses with a past, extreme homes, and houses built with interesting materials. And this time, houses that dare to be different. In this programme, we've got a group of houses that take a very clear stance about where they are, flexing and responding to their surroundings. Some answer that calling sympathetically, arriving with a polite nod and a welcome gift for the neighbours. Others dare to be different. They're not afraid to shake things up a bit, cause a kerfuffle, startle next door's cat. Helping me to look around our group of homes that dare to be different will be design expert and writer Michelle Gunderhin.
What a triumphal entrance to your home, isn't it?
And architect Damien Burrows.
Oh, nice.
There we go.
Nice.
Traditionally, we think of confrontation as being anathema to the British character. We don't like to make a fuss. But is that really true? See, from Boudicca to Charles Darwin, Emmeline Pankhurst, Johnny Rotten, we have a long tradition of rebellion against the status quo. But honestly, chaps, that doesn't mean to say we have to be rude about it. Our first rebellious house is in Hackney in East London, where among the genteel Victorian villas, a grey slab has landed on what was formerly a rundown old workshop. It's home to Jess, an artist and owner of Finks, the neighbourhood cafe. I've just seen your house next door, yeah?
Yes.
Bolted on.
Yes, I never leave this corner.
Do people come in and tell you what they think of the
They
house?
do, yes, for good or for bad. Sometimes I get a kind of, it's that you next door, I love it, you know, from the kind of architecty types. And one day someone came in and said, that is the ugliest building in Hackney, which was actually a bit of a highlight.
Jess's controversial house is in fact 3 dwellings. The bottom 2 floors are separate flats that she rents out, while above she lives in a maisonette on the top 2 floors with a double-height living space, 2 bedrooms and 2 balconies. While the outside render looks all tough, dark and chewy, inside the house reveals a softer centre. Jess and her architect used thick lime wash to coat the concrete block walls.
I really wanted to sort of have the honesty of the blocks, but kind of soften it so it's not too much like a prison.
The lime wash and bronze handrail suggest the Mediterranean more than they do modern penitentiary. And through to the main act.
Yes.
Is it?
Come on in.
That's very clever. Big concrete frame.
Yep.
With an infill of blockwork, just lime washed. The living area goes from a regular height kitchen past an enclosed balcony before opening into a lounge that's half normal height and half double height space. The freedom for Jess to take half the floor out is thanks to the concrete frame that holds up the whole building. It was poured into formwork to make a 3D grid, which could then be infilled afterwards with the blockwork.
Never let it be said that double height space is a waste of first floor footprint, because this is great. Now, do you enjoy this, or do you really think, actually, I should have put a little mezzanine in
No, I
there?
love it. I absolutely love it. The space over there is quite low, and actually, if it were anything else, it would feel quite cramped. As it is, that feels cosy because it's in comparison to this.
Yeah.
Which I love.
The RIBA jury were also smitten. They noted the exquisite detailing, the strong and yet delicate design, and a love of concrete that derives from Jess's obsession with blocks. Before she took on the cafe, Jess was a conceptual artist. She'd been using blocks for years in her work.
So I was spending a lot of my time kind of playing with these blocks in different sort of forms, but a lot of them just kind of sat in my brain and maybe didn't really go anywhere, and now maybe this is kind of part of where they've gone. It was really interesting to work with concrete in its right context. I've always, I did a piece where I put sort of concrete blocks in a fridge, but here they're just actually a building, so it's quite straightforward.
Oh, so you've been able to get concrete blocks out of your system by finally building with them. Yeah, rather than using them as a conceptual material.
Jess hasn't been afraid to push creatively at this design. Rather than being inspired by the buildings on the street, she's inventively taken ideas from the street itself.
Tarmac. Wall. They look very similar, don't they? And that is because here they've specified a crushed, dark, small stone in the render, in a mix which, as far as I can see, is a standard Highways Department specification.
Radical road-like render would seem a surefire way to annoy the neighbours.
This is a very modern structure and literally opposite my front door. How would that be? When I found out it was going to be concrete, I sort of held my breath.
And the architect behind this design knew it would be a tough sell.
Like probably any project, some people were incredibly supportive, some people were very sceptical, occasionally openly hostile.
Had her neighbours objected to the plans, the project could have been derailed before it got off the ground. But never underestimate the power of a flat white and a top-notch sarnie.
Jess started setting up the cafe next door, and she ended up kind of growing this kind of community life around it.
That must have been very helpful for you, taking the project through planning.
Yeah, no, it was great. And it was great that she had very open communication with everybody in the neighbourhood, even those who were kind of hostile to the project.
Yeah.
Even though this monolith was about to be built, it was kind of done in a way that we felt comfortable with it, because I kind of trusted her vision, because it was clearly she was a woman of taste.
She was here, so that made an enormous difference.
We actually ended up with no objections.
None.
Quite.
For a dark grey building that is uncompromisingly modernist.
Yes. Obviously, if you do a massive building on a residential street, nothing's without a bit of conflict.
Yeah.
But it's all been, we're all still friends, it's all okay.
The cocktail required to build this house consisted of creativity, bloody-mindedness, a measure of sweet, gentle charm, and some ice-cool determination, all of which seem present in the full-bodied character of the building.
It's beautiful. Not much of a view.
No, this is my secret outside space. In the summer, I sleep out here.
Seriously?
I sleep out here, and I'm totally private.
So you lie out here, you bring a mattress out, or what?
Yeah, I've got a little pad.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah. Just have a little...
I haven't set my alarm.
It's okay, because the sun will come up.
Jess can sleep soundly, knowing that she has shepherded to this place a bold new piece of architecture and brought the neighbours along too.
My honest opinion is I wish it was mine. I think it's beautiful. I think it really enhances the area.
Well, mostly.
I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either, I'm sorry.
On a bleak February afternoon, it is a little bit gulag. And so I've named it Gulag Chic.
What a bold and beautiful building that is. The result of fertile minds working together, and that's the point. It's not a house which has come about through litigation or through pushing or aggression or, for that matter, appeasement. No, this is a building that's great thanks to a really rare process in construction, and that is creative collaboration.
There are 4 more long-listed houses to explore.
The banks of the River Thames are most emphatically not the place for architectural experiments of this nature.
Before we find out which of them are shortlisted for the RIBA House of the Year 2018.
The House of the Year crown, like a hard hat, has an adjustable rim to accommodate all comers from mansions to maisonettes who wish to try it on. But it is decreed that each year there will be only one house that fits it perfectly.
So what does it take to win the RIBA House of the Year? 2015's winner, the geological Flint House, seemed to rise from the very rock beneath, and yet within it was all crystalline delight.
Oh, Lord. It has its own grotto. That is a stroke of genius, that.
Richard Murphy's house in Edinburgh won in 2016, a fabulous Wallace and Gromit home of invention and eccentricity.
Al fresco basil.
Too much.
Then last year it was the turn of the wonky castle, Caring Wood, a modern Kentish manor house that looks to the future of multi-generational living.
I remember on my first visit, I thought it was humongous. We often walk around saying, "Where are you?" And someone was like, "I'm over here, and look, where is that?"
3 very idiosyncratic winners, each one highly thoughtful, rooted in place, and very adventurous.
So, what makes a great classic piece of architecture? National treasures like St Paul's Cathedral, the Houses of Parliament, the National Gallery extension, they were all reviled as monstrous when they were built. So we need the bold risk takers who laugh in the face of fear and bravely stick their heads above the trenches. They might need a tin helmet to be on the safe side.
Our next Dare to be Different house is in Henley on Thames, a place of pointy-roofed Riverside Tudor-Beathan sobriety. So chocolate box perfect, they film Midsummer Murders here. And behind this rusty metal gate, Michelle Agundahin is here to see a house that caused some controversy on the riverbank. This is Pheasants. Concrete, rusty metal, modernist lines. Everything you wouldn't expect just a stone's throw from the banks of the River Thames. And its edgy owners are retired entrepreneurs, Dick and Judith, who's also an artist.
There's a natural tendency for people to want to reprise what's already been successful, and a hesitancy to try anything new. Introducing something new, a new element, is really quite difficult.
After retiring, Dick and Judith decided to replace their 1950s bungalow with Pheasants, a home that the RIBA judges called an extraordinary challenge to convention.
Hello.
Hello, Michelle. Welcome to our home.
Quite a triumphal entrance to your home, isn't it?
The main house sits at the end of this sleek ornamental pond opposite a guest house and studio. You enter through a reception hall which opens into a large living and dining space with a ground floor kitchen and a master bedroom suite. Up the stairs are another 4 bedrooms with further stairs up onto the roof terrace.
Did you want to commission something controversial, though, or you just meant something new that wasn't necessarily the same as everything around it?
What we wanted to commission here was a country villa for the 21st century. We wanted to commission something that was
Worthy of the site.
worthy of the site. We put in a planning application, and of course it was hit a maelstrom of objection from all kinds of people.
Because you were creating a monstrosity on their river.
An industrial estate, a World War II pillbox. So a lot of stuff like that, which was quite difficult to take.
Their original plans were amended, but the revised ones also drew objections. Despite this, the council granted planning permission.
Well, why do you think people got that sort of level of animosity towards the new?
When you say, why are you doing this, and the answer is because I can, you know there won't be much sensible debate about it. So what can you do?
We did dig our toes in, and it was a challenge which we rose to and met. Ended in the High Court, judge ruled in our favour, and then we were able to move on.
I'm absolutely dying to see inside it then. I want to know if it was all worthwhile.
From the formal reception hall, you glide into a main living and dining area, with views to the formal pond one way and the river the other. Space flows here, from the kitchen to the ground floor master bedroom with ensuite. Everything you could need is on one floor.
We knew we were getting old, alas, and age has its problems, one of which is accessibility. The house has been designed with these very wide pivot doors and sliding doors, so if we do ever end up in wheelchairs, we can still move around and be fully active.
But there can't be many retirement homes fashioned from this much concrete.
The concrete, it doesn't weigh heavily on your head, but you're very aware of it.
So the beauty of the concrete is that it isn't cavernous and the whole thing is really quite cosy.
And it's to do with the colour, because it's very warm. We didn't want grey concrete.
They did extensive colour tests, sampling pigments and ingredients to perfection. Then every batch of concrete for the walls, benches, walkways and floors had to be matched. Alongside this, all the Corten steel elements were made to order and fitted, including this 7.8-ton cantilevered carport, which arrived in a single piece. It was all keenly observed by the locals.
I got lumbered with delivering the parish magazine, turning up here once a month, dropping the parish magazine off. The people in the village want to know what's going on, and I basically let them know there's a bit more rust on the steel, a bit more concrete gone in, another large piece of glass turned up, and it's all looking pretty different to everything else around here.
The neighbours did have time to adjust, though. All in all, it took 3 years to make the guest house, then another 4 years for the main house.
It was a long old project, what with the kind of legal battle to start off with, and then a 7-year build. Why did it take so long, do you feel?
It was the fault of the clients, constantly interfering. And I am a firm believer that there's got to be that discussion between the person who's designing it and the people who are going to be using it.
The architects on the other side of this creative tussle were Ivan Taha and Sarah Griffiths.
Dick and Judith actually preferred to stay living on the site while the construction was going on. So beyond just bringing mugs of tea and coffee to the contractors, they're on site more often than we are.
And so pleasurable, painful?
Oh, inevitably both.
Sarah recalls that Dick had a motto to get them through the project.
They wanted it right, not quick. And I think I heard that on many occasions.
The result is a house utterly suited to Dick and Judith, from, of and for them and their needs. There are upstairs bedrooms for when the grandchildren stay. Details are also personal. The leafy screens offer some respite from all those straight lines.
I know that you as an artist had a lot of involvement into its design, didn't you?
Yes, I'm afraid we asserted ourselves on this. We wanted something that kind of tied in with the garden, the natural lines, sort of an organic pattern. I worked out some designs. Bit of a labour of love, but we're really pleased.
It's very beautiful, and when the sun shines, you get a wonderful effect on
the patterns come in, and they also reflect on things like the bathroom walls are glass, so you get it reflected again.
The man of steel who helped make all this was Neil Fry.
Corten and concrete is quite brutalist, it's quite aggressive.
Judith's pretty leafy screen, it turned out, was fairly brutal for Neil to make.
A lot of the problem was the pattern, was making sure there was enough negative space between the patterns such that the panels were strong enough in themselves and that we didn't get buckling and bowing.
The panels were pre-rusted with salt water before they were allowed on site, because, as this building in Bilbao shows, the last thing you want on your clean laundered concrete is rusty skid marks. And Neil appears to have done his job. Pheasants appears unblemished. And the 14-year struggle hasn't tarnished Dick's sense of humour. He's collated some of the complaints about the various plans in the downstairs loo.
There's some classics here, aren't there? My favourite, I think, is probably this one. We truly believe that the banks of the River Thames are most emphatically not the place for architectural experiments of this nature.
How about that? What is really nice about having this building is that because it's Riverside, it is seen by a lot of people, and it does set the tone for, I hope, a new generation of buildings along the Thames.
This is a project that's probably had more than its fair share of ups and downs, but now that the dust has settled and the legal bills have been paid, what we're left with is a house that doesn't fit into Henley, but shows it a way forward.
Still 3 more great houses in our Dare to be Different category.
Started off life a little bit quirky and then we just built on that, I think.
I like that. It was always quirky.
Could one of these be the RIBA House of the Year 2018?
It all looks and feels very serene here.
It says here in the rule book that a house will have a number of bedrooms upstairs, kitchen, living room, dining room downstairs, more toilets than the total number of occupants, and somewhere here, a set of bifold doors. But what if that isn't enough? I mean, what if you want to do something different? What do you do with the rule book then?
For the next house in our Dare to be Different category, I'm in polite North London. Lots of straight-laced townhouses. And here's another one. Dartmouth Park House. Looks like all the rest.
Very grey. Hello.
Hello.
Karen.
Very good, yeah.
Colin, pleased to meet you. Thanks very much. What a place. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
The unpretentious grey boarded-up shopfront conceals a little paradise island, a tropical fern tree, warm wooded balconies, an exotic spiral staircase, and an unnatural amount of sunlight for a Victorian house.
This is great. Wow. Tall. There's no inkling outside that it's like this.
Its totally tropical owners are Karen, a music, property and travel entrepreneur, and her husband Colin, a computer programmer and part-time DJ. The house is set over 4 floors. In the basement is an office. On the ground floor, there's a living and DJing room with a courtyard and guest room. On the first floor, a kitchen, diner and veranda. And on the top floor, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, all linked by a wild and winding staircase. There had been an office on the ground floor and a flat upstairs, but they gutted the place and fitted it out with a new interior made of Nicaraguan mahogany.
Why Nicaragua? What was the contact that led you there?
I went on holiday to Nicaragua and bought an island, as you do, in a lake, and built a sustainable hotel on it. And when we were talking to the architects over here about using lots of wood, I thought it would be a really lovely idea to kind of bring some of that wood, which is very personal to me, obviously, over to here to use in the house.
This Rainforest Alliance certified wood was used in every stair tread, window frame, door frame and plank of decking. The RIBA judges admired the warm and consistent finish it gave in this unusual and exotic home. The wood was made to measure 5,000 miles away and then arrived in a shipping container, the flat pack of nightmares. But sections like these perfectly curved banisters arrived as straight lengths, and so John Stidworthy, a specialist joiner, was brought in with his high-tech wood-bending steam box.
The principle of this is that the water boils, the steam comes up the tube and disperses through the box. The timber is already in the box, cooking.
After an hour or so, the heat and moisture cause the wood fibres to soften enough for it to be bent with clamps. The method has been used to make everything from rowing boats to grand pianos since the ancient Egyptians.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good.
The mahogany wasn't always so easy to work with, though.
It was the long curves that kept snapping and sending bits of mahogany all over the workshop.
Thankfully, the Nicaraguans had packed lots of spares, and John's patience and resilience has resulted in a set of beautifully crafted stairs that provide the backbone of this house and work a lot harder than your average set of steps.
What stairs do is connect floors in buildings. They allow people to use a townhouse like this efficiently. But here, the stairs are doing so much more. Here, the stairs allow light to pour down into the building. They allow the place to be visually open. You can communicate vertically in the place. And they are beautiful. Where are my keys? Can you, when you come down, can you bring my keys?
Once you're off the staircase, the house ignores the traditional approach to layout. The ground floor lounge morphs into Colin's DJ zone, which in turn becomes a palm tree in a courtyard, finishing in a guest room at the back. Heading up through the 9-metre-tall hallway, you arrive at the first floor, where instead of a pair of bedrooms, you have a kitchen diner with a view.
Just a really nice feeling, like just being able to sort of look out onto sort of loads of greenery. And
it sort of suggests that more people should be sort of swapping stuff around a bit and put the kitchen up in the building, elevated.
It's a quirky space anyway. It started off life a little bit quirky and then we just built on that, I think.
Yeah.
I like that. It was always quirky.
Yeah. Suits us.
Yeah.
The innovative design employs skylights to illuminate darkened corners like Colin's basement office, or on the veranda where the view is especially quirky.
It is always a thrill to stand on a glass roof, to be suspended, as it were, almost in mid-air. It is quite another thrill to be stood on a glass roof looking down into a bath. Not that there's anybody there.
The architects tasked with turning Colin and Karen's quirks into a livable home were Anthony Boulanger and Yoria Manolopoulou.
I think there's a charming and there's a romantic quality to the building. It's imbued with their loves and their passions and their backgrounds.
It's a piece of architecture that is half designed by us, and it is complemented by Karen and Colin.
It truly feels like it's a very personalized home for them.
Karen and Colin have thrown out the conventions of a London townhouse, creating an unusual upside-down tropical house that's also a very good party pad for their friends and neighbours.
It's a lovely place to hang out, but it's also very much a warm home, a very reflection of those two.
This place is not normal. This place is different. It's the next evolutionary step for the conventional, narrow, urban townhouse, where walls disappear in order to make way for big slabs of furniture or just for fresh air, and where staircases become sculptural. And the payoff for all of that, the benefit, is that these guys get a home which is absolutely chock full of light and delight and fun. Lamination, which is the process of gluing lots of thin strips of something together, is used a lot in construction. You can take materials which are naturally flimsy and wobbly, glue them together, and lo and behold, emerge with something rigid, hard and strong. Goodness me, there is power and strength in numbers.
Here in Newcastle upon Tyne, the next entry in our competition is definitely stronger because it's not one house but two stuck together, a half-submerged, semi-detached called Ousburn Road. This stylish modern thing could have had the neighbours up in arms in a traditional suburban area like this, unless you were building with them. One side is owned by Tim, a furniture maker, and Pippa, a psychologist, while next door live Libby, an actor, and her son Fred.
So we've been neighbours for 24 years. We bought houses next door to each other. So over those years, a strong friendship has been forged.
The neighbours share one building, but have arranged their halves differently. In Tim and Pippa's house on the ground floor, there's a garage come workshop, utility and guest room. And on the first floor, 2 bedrooms and an open-plan living space. Next door in Libby's house on the ground floor there are 2 bedrooms, a garage and utility room, and like Tim and Pippa on the first floor there are 2 more bedrooms and an open-plan living space. Both houses are connected with a shared garden, very civilised. Building with your neighbour is, of course, incredibly brave.
Most people would run a mile from that kind of thing. You lived together up there and now you live together down here.
We're very good friends. We enjoyed being neighbours for 24 years at the top. Wanted to continue to be neighbours. We were looking to downsize and suddenly we realised that at the bottom of our garden we had a building plot.
So we built it in the bottom of the garden.
If building in the backyard wasn't daring enough, their plot was on a hill. So having dug out 1,200 tons of soil, they built a wall to keep the earth back. The building set into a slope, so it could have felt dingy and dark, but Tim and Pippa's hallway doesn't feel like a burrow.
Oh, wow. I mean, this is just so fantastically light and bright in here.
Yes, that was the key part of the design, because obviously at the bottom of the hill and built into the hill, getting light was the concern.
This room is actually underground.
As well as the underground guest room, Tim has his workshop on this floor. This giant skylight and glass bridge above bring light down into this minimal hallway, in which the truly stick-out feature is the sculptural cantilevered staircase.
We're very, very proud of this. I think originally it was Pip's idea to have the chunky concrete steps which have been made by a friend of ours.
That friend was Russ Coleman, a concrete artist.
So in this is bits of sculptures from 25 years ago.
As well as steps, he also makes light shades and concrete vegetables.
It's akin to cooking, really. We can have a batter mix or a cake mix or a sponge mix.
Russ went for more of a super thick Christmas pudding mix with Tim and Pippa's stairs.
There's an addition of extra fibres and a bit of polymer to strengthen them.
The judges praised Usburn as a testament to the passion of both architects and clients, and an exemplar for contemporary living. Nowhere better seen than on the magnificent open-plan first-floor living room, gloriously secluded, yet connected to its setting.
We spent extra money on this glazing. It was very important for us that there was as little intrusion into that wonderful view as possible. So all the framework is recessed in the ceiling and the walls in the floor, and you just have these very fine dividers.
And it all looks and feels very serene here now, but I imagine this was a project that was not without its challenges.
You can see the hillside, the amount of earth that had to be excavated to clear the site. It was a huge engineering project, actually. I mean, one of the problems we faced was that underneath here is a whole load of tunnels and
empty spaces.
Empty spaces. It was described to me, the land that you're trying to build on is a bit like a packet of cornflakes.
There were 14th century abandoned drift mines underneath, a rabbit warren of tunnels originally dug for coal that had to be stabilised by filling with tons of poured concrete before the masonry structure for the houses could be put up. It cost £300,000 to build each house. Tim and Pippa stayed in their old house during construction, but Libby had to sell hers quickly to fund the project.
I lived with friends for a year. I did come down and check out what was happening. It was a very big haul for a long time. Nothing was happening quick enough.
There was no turning back for you. You've
None.
sold your house and moved out.
Exactly.
So you were really probably watching your money just disappear into those foundations.
Just took forever.
Now finished, the end result is as far removed from a hole in the ground as you could possibly imagine. Tim, Pippa and Libby aren't the only ones daring to be different by building at the ends of their gardens. Their architects built their own house round the corner and hope that Libby, Tim and Pippa can inspire others to do the same.
In the 1800s, this little quiet cul-de-sac was a major thoroughfare up until the days when they blocked it off. We're all very keen to populate this old back street. Tim, Pippa and Libby bring a bit of activity to the lane down here.
Already, Tim, Libby and Pippa's brave architecture is starting to inspire others locally.
We are looking at getting an extension, and it will be in a similar style, quite an industrial, modern look.
Building a house with your neighbours, I guess it's something worth considering.
I didn't see too many arguments. It sits very well on the slope of the hill, it blends in nicely and looks great.
While many of us might try and separate ourselves from our neighbours, these guys did quite the opposite. They came together, pooling their resources to build 2 beautiful and bespoke homes.
One bold and bright, daring house yet to see.
Some of the neighbours, it became known as the bloody red house.
Before we find out which homes have made it to the shortlist of 2018's RIBA House of the Year.
All it took was for Clark Kent to put on a pair of glasses and nobody knew he was Superman. So what do you do if you're trying to smuggle in a superpowered house amongst the good people of Metropolis? It's going to take more than a disguise from the joke shop, isn't it? Especially when the house is wearing a big red superhero suit.
London, where it seems every other street is made of the same London stock brick. Nice, neat, uniform and yellow. Maybe with a risque bit of red detailing. Until this cheeky little rebel turned up. Red House, an end of terrace with sunburn. Stephen Davis and Will Burgess are behind this project. And Damien Burrows has gone to meet them at... what's it called again?
Hey, guys.
Hi. Some of the neighbours, it became known as the bloody red house. And I think it was because they were builders' vans. You know, we share lots of boundaries with lots of neighbours. And we just sort of... it just stuck.
Red House has been built on the site of an old garage. You enter and step down to a sunken ground floor, which leads to a living area, kitchen, 2 courtyards and a TV room. Then upstairs are 2 bedrooms on the first floor and a master bedroom with ensuite on the second. And now the skips have gone, it sits happily at the end of this terrace, thanks in part to sympathetic details that the RIBA jury thought were bold and assertive without being disrespectful.
As a piece of architecture in a house, it feels very settled. It kind of has the feeling like it's always been here.
We certainly hope that it feels natural and not forced.
I think we want our buildings to feel like they're part of their surroundings, that they haven't imposed their will on the street or their setting.
Inside, they've dug down the ground floor by over a metre, maintaining a low profile, while also spreading out to fill the whole plot to make the ground floor much larger than it appears from the street.
Ah, this is interesting to come straight in on the stairs.
It means we managed to get 3 floors in the space of 2 of our neighbours, so we got effectively a larger house.
Great spatial tricks continue. The ground floor is a series of loosely aligned, wide, slightly weirdly angled rooms, a world away from the dark and narrow spaces you'd expect of a Victorian terrace.
Wow. I mean, this is a beautiful collection of just little interconnected spaces. This is clever stuff.
And what we did was sort of push all the spaces to the edges, and you end up with these kind of courtyards, which make it incredibly private, so we're not overlooked.
Kitchen, lounge, diner, snug. All these familiar spaces are here, but arranged around courtyards in a way that refreshes your idea of what a terraced house can be. Red House was commissioned by a developer as a one-off, and it was bought a year ago by Daisy, a dancer, and her husband Sean, a chief technology officer. But it's not just the more open spaces that caught their attention.
This is one of my favourite bits of the house. We've got a little hidden door. Guests, they go, where's the downstairs toilet? Have you got a downstairs toilet? And I just say, yes, just push this wall. And
oh, nice.
There we go.
Nice.
It's really, obviously, functional, really useful to have a downstairs toilet, but you almost don't want it to you don't want to see it too much, so it's, perfect.
You haven't found a guest here hopping from foot to foot saying, where is it?
Not yet.
Upstairs, the spaces are more conventional, with office, bedroom and bathroom on the first floor and a master bedroom suite on the second. But the stairs that lead you there are anything but.
Typical Victorian house would only allow itself a little bit of detail and interest, usually in the ceilings and the staircase. Is this a little bit of a nod to that detail?
Yeah, I think it is. I think looking at that craftsmanship and how we can bring that into this kind of staircase was, it was an important part of the design.
The curve of the landing is reflected in the arch of the window, part of a single concrete panel that was made off-site. It takes inspiration from the Victorian details of its neighbours.
First impressions matter, which is why outside many Victorian houses you'll find these beautiful tiled pathways. Now, Red House takes that pattern, abstracts it, and blows it up into this epic monolithic slab of concrete.
The man behind this one-of-a-kind creation was Martin Pinion. The team spent weeks experimenting with dyes to colour match the red bricks. Then a wooden version was made, which was then used as the model for a rubber mould.
You can see the complexity of the shape the architect was looking for. You can see that reflected in the mould. The complex part of it is actually in the demoulding. That's the part that can either make it or break it. Even though there's very, very tiny fragments of concrete, they all came off with perfectly intact. I think several people said it couldn't be done. I think it has paid off. Yeah, it does look spectacular.
But craftsmanship comes at a price, about £15,000 with installation.
So it's like buying quite a small family car and hanging it on your front facade and think, yes, I have just spent that much on this one component of this one house. It's become the motif of the house, I suppose, so it was worth investing in.
It's a credit to the property developer that they were prepared to invest in a one-off like Red House, but spending still had to be kept within sensible limits.
So with a house like this, what sort of budget are you looking at?
Well, the end figure was under £500,000 for the construction of the property.
To build a house like this, £500,000 with this sort of spatial configuration, seems like a bit of a steal to me.
Red House fuses together the familiarity of Victorian architecture with the boldness of modernism. It links arms with its neighbours whilst quietly asserting itself. And I think it does this with a playfulness that's absolutely captivating.
Five very different houses with distinct personalities, but which will the jury think has the edge that could get them onto the shortlist for the 2018 RIBA House of the Year?
Blackstone House, a monolithic slab that rejects conformity ever so politely. Pheasants, that shows that a Riverside home doesn't have to be watered down. Dartmouth Park, Nicaragua meets North London in a spiralling reinvention of the townhouse. Oosburn Road, a triumph of semi-attached teamwork. And Red House, a modern marvel of layout in a bright red onesie.
So which have the jury picked to go through to the shortlist for the RIBA 2018 House of the Year?
Niall Maxwell, one of last year's winners and a member of the jury, has come to reveal all.
So what have you shortlisted?
We've shortlisted Pheasants. The reason this was shortlisted was because it's an incredibly ambitious project. It works on two levels, the grandeur and the simplicity of home. I really enjoyed actually the way in which the landscape was used to bring these two buildings together. It's a very clever set of spaces that we enjoyed, but also the way in which that building sits up above the garden.
Thank you very much. That's good to know.
Good news.
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations to us all.
Certainly very delighted for Dick and Judith.
It's just a lovely place to live in. It works extraordinarily well, and we're very happy.
With Pheasants through to the shortlist, there's space for one more from this daring group of buildings.
So Niall, what have you shortlisted?
We've shortlisted Red House.
So why have you shortlisted Red House?
It is a brilliant example of how to use a small infill site in a city and create some transformative architecture. But at the same time, it's not feeling out of place because it looks like it's bookending the terrace.
You live here?
I definitely live here. It's a really clever house. It's really well executed.
And great for one of the architects, Steve, who made the long list last year with his own house, number 49.
I think that's great. I mean, that's
cool.
Brilliant.
And it means we beat Steve's house that only got longlisted last year. So that's more important. Red House is better than number 49.
It's subjective.
So we're off with Red House and Pheasants, our first 2 on the shortlist. But 5 more must join them before we find out at the end of the series which has won House of the Year 2018.
All good and virtuous buildings respond to where they are, but the really special ones don't just hold up a mirror and mindlessly ape their surroundings. They reverberate to the spirit of a place. In the dialogue between place and architecture, they dare to push the conversation on in ways that can surprise, delight, and occasionally shock. As the late great playwright Neil Simon once said, if no one ever took risks, Michelangelo would have ended up painting the Sistine floor.
Next time, we'll be looking at houses with a past.
I like the crack in the wall.
That's intentional. We thought about that for a while and decided not to spend any money doing anything on that.
5 more breathtaking projects, all with a story to tell.
It was a storm away from complete loss.
If you could design and build your dream home, what would it be? And would you go for some kind of Howard Hughes Art Deco cliff top fantasy, or some kind of castle in the air up in the mountains somewhere? Or maybe what's lurking in your imagination looks a bit like one of these.
These are the fantastical homes on the long list, all hoping to win the Royal Institute of British Architects' prestigious House of the Year award.
Wow, this is clever stuff.
So far, we've seen houses from our Dare to Be Different category.
Started off life a little bit quirky and then we just built on that, I think.
In today's episode, we're looking at a new category of 5 more houses, all historical homes, buildings with a past.
It was a storm away from complete loss.
All utterly transformed.
Oh God, wow. This is an incredible library.
At the end of the programme, we'll find out which of these spectacular homes have made it onto the shortlist.
I think that's great. I mean, that's cool. Brilliant.
Then, at the end of the series, we'll discover which of them is the winner of one of the most celebrated prizes for residential architecture, the 2018 House of the Year.
The best bit for you is that you don't even have to take your shoes off to look around these places, whereas I do.
So far in this series, we've revealed the first 2 buildings that have made it onto the shortlist. The chiselled zigzag that is Pheasants, and the super-powered Red House. This time we're looking at 5 historical houses from the long list, all with a fascinating past. Exploring these buildings with me is the architect Damien Burrows.
This is really what you call a sense of arrival.
And the interiors and design expert, Michelle Gunderhin.
The solidity of the walls makes me feel almost like I'm being given a big hug by this house.
In this programme, we're looking at houses with a past, buildings which have a history, which they remember and celebrate, no matter how many regrets or failed marriages they've suffered. Anyway, like people, their life stories are part of what makes them great buildings. Think of them as the raconteurs of the architectural world, fizzing with eye-popping tales that could keep you entertained into the small hours. The point being that every house in this episode has its own story to tell.
Our first stop is the East End of London. Wartime bombing, slum clearance and development have all destroyed much of its precious stock of historic buildings. Yet in this tight little corner, one proudly remains. Stepping out of the gaslight and pea soup of 1890 into the 21st century is this, a late Victorian gin distillery. What was once a derelict spirit factory has been transformed into a light two-bedroom home set over 2 floors. You enter into a large double-height living space with a TV room cum spare bedroom and office, and then upstairs 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and a hidden courtyard. The monumental challenge of converting this place might have been too much for most families, but not for Rupert Scott, an architect, and his wife, Leo Wood, an interior designer.
Frankie, you can have the little man or the train.
The East End is particularly rich in sort of different overlapping stories and buildings from different eras.
There's a real sense of history as well, and we love that.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hello, hi.
Hello, Leo, yeah?
Yes.
How are you?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Rupert, is that
Yes,
right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, the first thing that strikes me is that it feels very respectful.
We've tried to hold on to some of the old scars of the building that was here before, and they're all just indicators of the history, the industry, such as the lintels and some of these metal ties. And
There's a remnant of a brick arch there.
Yeah, so the buildings are all connected and they're all part of the same distillery, yeah.
I like the crack in the wall. Just...
Oh yeah, that's intentional. We thought about that for a while and we decided not to spend any money doing anything on that. There was a time when it was pretty derelict and just a storage warehouse for a period of time.
A rat-infested storage warehouse.
Okay.
Yeah, so we didn't walk in and find lovely old kind of copper vats and traces of what had happened. We found an old snooker table, I think, and lots of
some wheelchairs.
Grass and all sorts of random things in the building.
Inside, where once was darkness and dereliction, all is now airy and clean. The judges longlisted the house as an example of contemporary architecture patched together with a mix of repair work, reclamation and restoration. You can almost smell the spirit of the old gin distillery. The original large steel windows have been reinstated. The exposed steel stairs and beams hint at the building's industrial past. Rupert has designed an elegant and, importantly, modest home.
Quite simple, really.
Not too snazzy.
Yeah,
not too snazzy.
Yeah.
Let's put that part of the brief.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Don't show off.
Don't show off, yeah.
There is something in you as a person. There's a kind of integrity, honesty. You would hate anything to feel too grand.
How much was it to do? Because old buildings tend to cost quite a bit more, usually.
The project, all in, including fees, was $450,000. A lot of the initial spend was on patching up and restructuring the existing buildings.
So where did the crunches come for you?
We had a baby mid-project, so that was a bit of a distraction.
That's quite a big stress, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think Leo's generally just more sort of emotionally consistent and strong in these situations than I am. I'm sort of was worrying more, I think, throughout.
Having a baby and working with an old building, well, it doesn't get more demanding than that. In addition, the couple were determined to preserve and repair the crumbling walls of the old distillery. They built an internal steel frame to brace the old walls and support the new first floor, which now houses a bathroom, 2 bedrooms, and this quiet, contemplative terrace hidden in the middle of the building.
What's this room down here?
That's our study.
Yeah.
A good size skylight, though.
Good size skylight. Yeah.
So this deck has a number of important functions. Introducing light down there, introducing light into the back of that room here, through this glazed wall, into the stairwell, and beyond as well.
That, of course, isn't structural glass.
Yes, it is.
This is a tightly hemmed-in building, but you wouldn't know it. Rupert is a master of illumination.
There is a lovely, soft, grey light hitting the floor in this stairwell here that is being sort of spilled down into it from the lighting sources up here, including this enormous great skylight above me, and that enormous light well there with the glass wall, and the big painted wall behind it, which is bouncing light back into the building, which means that the bathroom, lit entirely through this opening, again, is bathed in this sort of soft, quite ethereal, really, really comforting light. But of course, with light, you also need, contrastingly, you need darkness, particularly for sleeping. So in the children's bedroom here is a shutter. What's interesting about this is not only does it keep all the light out, but it means that at night, when the helicopter lands at the hospital next door, the children aren't woken up because it's adding to the sound insulation. There we go. Light, darkness, and every conceivable shade of subtlety in between. Can't find the door handle.
Organising all these hidden windows on such an intimately surrounded site without sacrificing privacy needed a very 21st century approach.
We had to be really careful about the overlooking thing, and one of the things that really helped us with that was we got a 3D scan done, and that allowed us to be really careful about the angles that you were looking at, so what you want to see and what you don't want to see.
To work out the sight lines and avoid overlooking or being overlooked by their neighbours, Rupert and Leo got in Will Trossel to 3D scan the old building using technology adopted by NASA.
The technology we use is called terrestrial LiDAR scanning. That has an infrared laser on board the machine, and that is bounced off a wall or a floor to make a really comprehensive model of inside, out, and all of the context. So this is the building before anything had happened. I'm just taking the camera out to the view from his neighbour's window, with his neighbour's windows are here, and look down and have an understanding of what they would see and allow him to adjust sensitivity around privacy and which windows people could see in and through.
A staggering design tool to make sure you're not seen in your underwear. The work that's gone into lifting the spirits of this derelict old gin factory hasn't gone unnoticed by their neighbours. Ray Rinkoff's family have run a bakery here since 1911.
I think the property is fantastic what they've done. To make a living place out of that, it's a real hidden like a little gem, I think. I like it so much, I've told them I want first refusal when they sell it.
The thing about architecture is not only should it, as this place does, contribute to a place and help repair it, but it should also add more. This building is a wonderful conservation job. It lifts this little corner of London and contributes to its regeneration. And I find that irresistible.
We have 4 more extraordinary homes from our Houses with a Past category.
Was there a moment of cutting back all of the undergrowth and just going, oh, there are many moments like that?
Until we discover which have made it to the shortlist for the RIBA 2018 House of the Year.
It's only natural, isn't it, that human beings want to improve their world. You know, you buy something and immediately you want to try and make it better. You know, you add some gizmos, the latest knickknacks, make it cool. Maybe even add some zing, only to discover that, oh, it's hideous. And the lesson here is that the bare bones of the thing, its core strength, is sometimes all you need to provide character. I've changed my mind. Can I have a double vodka, please? No ice.
No zhuzhing up needed for our next House with a Past, which Michelle Agundahin has travelled to see on the ragged and wild Devon coast. This is Coastal House, a 100-year-old farmhouse magically reinvented and brought into the 21st century, yet still in touch with its humble origins. This is a new pared-back, sleek, elegant home with thick oak beams and expansive living spaces, all wrapped in an elegant grey slate shell. You enter into a hallway that becomes a double-height dining room. To the left is a kitchen and utility room, And on the seaward side, a double-height living space with a mezzanine study. The hallway continues all the way up to the first and second floor, with 5 charming bedrooms. It's home to Sally and Edward, who have a strong connection to the area.
Chilla.
We were undergraduates together at the same university, and so we used to come down here as students.
So we knew the place extremely well, and we wanted to make more of our lives down here because this is a place that we'd always been happy, however stressful life was. We will share the rest of our lives here in this place. Haven't quite got round to working out where I'd like to be buried, but it'll be somewhere on this site.
The early 20th century farmhouse that Edward and Sally bought couldn't have been more different from how it is now.
Hello.
Hi, morning.
Really nice to meet you.
Hello, Michelle, nice to
Hi
meet
there.
you.
You could see it had really beautiful bone structure, but there'd been a series of owners who hadn't lived here permanently, so there wasn't a sense of creating a family home.
Over the years, the house had become a sprawling mess of rooms. They were tempted to knock the whole thing down.
We even had planning permission to do that at one point, but we realised that we would be losing something if we did that. Underneath all the layers of slightly awkward additions, there was something rather beautiful about the traditional farmhouse.
Thank you. Oh, wow.
Sally and Edward have stripped back the inside to uncover the best of the old building.
Now you really start to get the sense of what you were talking about with you unpeeling the original house.
Yeah.
So were all these walls completely obscured?
Yes, they were all clothed in plaster. What this design allowed us to do was to reveal the stone walls inside. It certainly feels as though what we're doing is honest, if you like, to the original construction of the house.
The solidity of the walls makes me feel very safe and secure in here too. I feel kind of almost like I'm being given a big hug by this house.
If you're here in a gale in February and the wind's howling outside, being tucked in here does feel extremely secure.
The judges praised a scheme that is rooted in place, rich in history, but also rich in contemporary detail and delight. It's a beautifully made home that makes the best of its magical setting.
Standing here in the middle of this house, you can see the sea, the front drive, the walled garden, and behind me, the old oak tree. So right in the centre of this big old house, you still feel incredibly connected to the surroundings.
Wherever it can, this building brings you closer to the outdoors. These window seats are a new opportunity to sit and gaze. A nice touch from the architect, Steph MacDonald.
When we realised we had these kind of 1/2 metre thick stone walls, then a window seat was sort of natural thing to do. So they're all dotted around the house, and it's just a very social thing, a window seat, actually. People can perch, they can chat while somebody's doing something else.
Details like this are delightful social touches, blessing the building with a great deal of humanity and banishing decades of thoughtless design.
It's just so hard to imagine what it could have looked like before.
The process was very slow. We bought it and lived in it for a year before we started even approaching people about what we might do. We did get a bit impatient in the first year, and so we took down all the old curtains and just decided to live with no curtains at all. And we decided, because we didn't like the wallpaper, that we spray painted and had big marker pens. We thought this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to just do it, because we know we're going to take all of that down.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting part of the story that you can take an existing house, and in order to make something that is both brilliant for modern day living but also has some resonance with its location and its history, it's not necessary to flatten it. You can take what's best of the original structure and you can rework it into a modern house.
Old places are complicated to work on. The simple rigour of new build didn't apply here. Every detail had to be crafted and adapted to where it comes in the building. New work reinterprets the place's existing materials in a lighter language, such as the staircase designed by Steph.
The actual form of the balustrade, if this was just straight and this thin, that's the kind of break point, that's the compression. So by thickening it in the middle and allowing it to be slender at the top, you get a sense of slenderness and lightness to it, but actually it's the strongest structural shape.
What an elegant way of adding strength and lightness. Steph hasn't stopped at balusters, though. She's also treated structural columns in the building as crafted objects in the same way. They were made in Somerset by Jonathan Dethier and James Bryce.
Each one of those columns would have taken about 4 to 5 hours. It's an old trade. It's one of the oldest trades around, is being wood turner. I mean, you can trace it back to the Romans and the Egyptians. The columns we did for Coastal House started off like this, and then obviously to get the curve, the curves had to be put in by hand to the set diameters we got off a template.
But has all this simple, naked craftsmanship changed the building in the eyes of those who know it best? Norman Eastley, the local tenant farmer, has been working the land here for 17 years.
What they've done is unbelievable. You know, I'm still speechless, really. Those pieces of oak and the whole design, the stonework. You know, I'm not an architect or a judge. I'm just, what I see is what I think, you know.
This farmhouse had kind of lost its way over the last 100 years, but by celebrating its bone structure and traditional stone and slate, Sally and Edward have brought it back to something that's really firmly rooted in both its history and the location.
So far, we've seen 2 charming houses, rich in soul and spirit. There are 3 more to visit before we find out which have made the shortlist for House of the Year. That is how Isaac Newton discovered gravity, sort of. History is, you see, chock full of examples of everyday objects inspiring great things, demonstrating that it's often from humble origins that the most powerful ideas grow.
The origins of our next house are as humble as it gets. Damien Burrows is in Yorkshire to see it. This is Old Shed, New House. Once a farming shed for tools and tractors, now reincarnated as a glamorous home. Inside, it has sleek, modern spaces, smooth finishes, and high-tech insulation and heating. It still retains the shape and character of the original farm building. Downstairs, a long gallery leads to a modern kitchen, and nestled between a functional dining room and a bedroom, there's a double-height library containing hundreds of books. Upstairs, a bridge takes you across to the upper library level, with 2 further bedrooms occupying both ends of the house. The owners are book-mad David and Lauren, who wanted to build a place to retire to. Luckily for them, they had a son who was an architect.
There was a sort of mild panic where I realised I'd be responsible for their whole life savings. But growing up, I might have been somewhat of a nightmare child. So it was very nice to be able to go some way to, give them something back.
What a way to do it. Greg worked with the lead architect, Mike Tonkin, to make a building that would sit happily in its place. The exterior has been clad with shot-blasted larch and galvanised steel, the colours matching the silvery bark of the surrounding birch trees. And the varied horizontal slats are a nod to the building that was here originally.
Hey.
Hi there, hi.
Lauren, how are you?
Very nice to see you.
David,
Hi.
really good to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
What was on the site before?
There was a shed, really more like a very large gardener's shed, wooden and steel framed. The architects had the idea of keeping the design of the original shed.
I think the first thing we thought was, we need some windows.
They help.
Yeah.
Always useful. Retaining the shape of the old agricultural shed retained some continuity on the site. The new place carries a memory of the old. It was also a clever way to save money.
We kept the steel frame from the original shed, so we didn't have to buy any new. Kept all the timber. We extended the concrete floor slab. We've done farm buildings before, but they've just been industrial jobs, clad in actual farms. We haven't converted any farms into larch-clad, bespoke dwellings, no.
It took almost a year to transform a storage space for agricultural machines into this.
Wow, what an incredible space.
Old Shed, New House brought gasps of admiration from the RIBA jury, who commended the exquisite detailing of the house. The tree-lined approach continues right through an indoor corridor towards the open-plan kitchen.
This is such a wonderful space to be in.
It's a point at which we can see into much of the house and also the fabulous vista down the birch trees.
And just a few steps across the corridor/art gallery is this.
Oh God, wow. This is an incredible library.
It's a book lover's paradise for David and Lauren to enjoy well into their retirement.
There's so much light in here, it's absolutely fantastic. But it's directly in the centre of the house, occupying what you could say is the prime piece of the whole home.
We had the confidence to make this the kind of principal space because I personally knew how much time my parents spent in what was their old library. We knew that that would be where they spent most of their time. So we made the kind of living space smaller because in a way this is actually also the living space. Often libraries, they're kind of quite dark and kind of moody, and we wanted something else, something that spoke more of the kind of landscape outside. And so we wanted to really open it up. And we always saw the library as this kind of, almost like a clearing in a forest where you'd kind of sit and read a book, or sitting under a tree and reading a book.
To achieve the dappled light and shade of a forest clearing, they used wooden slats and a perforated roof grille below a skylight. This is architecture as a canopy of leaves. Mirrors behind the bookshelves reflect the greenery outside and make the room seem much larger. Ideas like this were a leap of faith for Lauren and David.
We wouldn't have ever, embarked on this really if we didn't have a son who was an architect, because you need a lot of courage to do something like this.
Having the confidence to root your home in the past, whilst you're still developing your hopes and dreams for the future, well, that's a very complex architectural puzzle. I'm so impressed by how Lauren and David have risen to that challenge and created a truly stunning home.
If you've ever lived in an old house, you'll know that we don't buy old places in a kind of cool, rational way, but well, usually out of some kind of romantic impulse. We fall in love with them. Then comes the dilemma of whether to restore, adapt, conserve, fundamentally alter, or even, in a fit of pique, destroy it. Preservation, evolution, or revolution. Sometimes we need to throw off the yoke of the old in order to truly evolve. The city of Bath is beautiful, principally because of one big idea: Georgian architecture.
These 18th century honey-coloured buildings have helped to make the city a protected World Heritage Site. No surprise then that over 5,000 of them are listed and fiercely protected.
Those people who are lucky enough to live in listed buildings, you are actually a custodian for the future, really, rather than necessarily an owner who can do what they like.
There are always going to be tremendous challenges to building in a city like Bath.
Rising to those monumental challenges is our next long-listed house, Duncan Cottage, a Grade 2 listed 1790s building with a brand spanking new 21st century extension. On the ground floor is a kitchen and dining room that opens out onto an internal courtyard. There are 2 studies, as well as a living space that connects onto the new extension. And on the first floor are 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. The owner is Hilary, who bought this epic restoration project with her husband, Richard.
Look at that. Hello.
Hi.
Hilary. How are you?
Very well.
Nice house.
Thank
Beautiful
you.
place. What kind of nick was it when you found it? Was it?
Lots of 1970s interior, cupboards everywhere.
Yeah. So you didn't fall in love
I
with
didn't fall in love with it. No, Richard fell in love with it. He could see the potential.
But before Hilary and Richard could start work on site, there was a tragedy. Richard passed away in 2010, leaving Hilary facing the project alone.
You could so easily have just said, you know what, move on, do something else.
No, after Richard passed, it was definitely something that I felt was a positive move for us to carry through what his visions were. It was kind of a therapeutic thing for us.
Inside, what were a series of dark rooms have been knocked through to make bright open spaces that flow easily from one to another. The historic features here, from the elegant sash windows to the beautiful Georgian staircase, have all been cherished and polished to their former glory.
Beautiful handrails and staircase. These were all here, were them?
Yes, these were here.
Yeah.
While the kitchen has been revamped for the 21st century.
Oh, wow. This is, on the other hand, what you'd call a strong modern intervention. A big slab of a kitchen. And a big slab of a room as well, isn't it? It's kind of very simple.
The judges praised Duncan Cottage for transforming an 18th century listed home to meet 21st century requirements. But the invasive work needed to transform it all took place while Hilary was living there.
Wow, with everything looking...
A mess.
A mess.
Absolutely, everything covered in dust. I wouldn't do it that way again. I would definitely move out.
Hilary's unwillingness to move out of the home she'd bought with her late husband almost doubled the programme, which was supposed to be 9 months.
Ended up taking nearly 18 months because of the process of what we had to go through, moving room to room. When we were about to rip out our kitchen and we walked in the morning and she had guests staying. So we had a family at a table, we had her friends sitting there, and we were sort of there ready to go with our tools to take her kitchen out.
Hilary wanted to replace the 1970s conservatory with something less hideous. Not an easy thing to do on a Grade 2 listed building in a World Heritage Site.
How was Bath Planning Department about that?
We met resistance. Strictly speaking, the Listed Building Act doesn't allow you to take anything away from these buildings or add to them without justification.
The architect, James Grayley, and his team delved into the history of the house and discovered that it was built by a well-known 18th century architect, John Palmer. Several old plans show a structure on the side of the house labelled loggia, or outdoor room. Palmer's 18th century drawings convinced Bath Council to let Hilary build her modern extension. A historic plan carefully reinterpreted for the 21st century.
And now, across this threshold into this. Now, there's a nice simple clarity about this. Change of level, 2 different sizes of windows. What would Richard have made of this, do you think?
I think he would have loved this space. I often wonder what he would think about it, but I'm sure he'd love it.
To connect the modern extension to its historic setting, only one material would do: Bath stone. It's what most of the city is made of, and it comes from deep inside this local quarry.
Bath stone is a fantastic material to work with.
We've got to cut the stone precise because you don't really want to see the joints. Although techniques have changed, it's still a traditional trade, still using hand tools.
And the end result speaks for itself. A house built across the centuries, harmonised by one material. This project helps move the city forward into the 21st century.
What this building does is what great architecture does at any scale. It reorganises, repurposes and revitalises an existing place. And it does that with tremendous conviction and clarity and determination. Now, this project is important. And it's quiet.
We have one more exquisite house to see from our Houses with a Past category.
Started on this construction site, I was 17, and by the time we finished, I was 23.
Before we find out which of them the RIBA judges have shortlisted for House of the Year.
Breathing new life into a bit of old junk, well, that does require imagination sometimes, to be able to see beyond what other people perceive as just a piece of rubbish. There we are. It is time-consuming, of course. It does require patience. It can be precise, but it will reward you for all of the effort taken. There. Has anybody seen the handle?
Time and patience on an epic scale were required at our next house, hidden away deep in the Worcestershire countryside. Damien Burrows went to find it.
What an incredible setting. The house is just framed perfectly by the flanks of the bridge. This is really what you call a sense of arrival.
Reaching back 400 years into the past is the old courthouse, once a family home for small-scale farmers in the 17th century. It's a house of two halves. On one side is a careful restoration of an old ruin with salvaged timbers and sympathetic reproduction fittings, while the other half is built from scratch, light and modern, but in the spirit of the original. It took over 5 years to bring this old house back to life. In the old part, there's a basement, a library room and a study on the ground floor, and 2 bedrooms on the first floor. It's connected by a hallway to the new section, where there's an open-plan living room and kitchen, 2 bedrooms on the first floor and another bedroom and study in the attic. The man who oversaw the epic task of building this was architect Rhys Brooks.
Rhys, Damien, welcome.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good to meet you.
When Rhys first took on the project, all that remained of the original house was 4 wobbly walls and a chimney stack.
Was there a moment of cutting back all of the undergrowth, standing back and just going, oh?
Yes, there are many moments like that, you know. Many moments of fear and many moments of how on earth do I deal with this?
As Rhys investigated the structure, he realised it was in worse condition than he could have imagined.
It'd been abandoned for 30, 40 years. There were trees growing out of it. There were birds and bats. It had basically become feral. There is no structural bracing at all. And you could literally see this thing moving in the wind. You could literally push it with your hand. It was a storm away from complete loss.
The RIBA judges praised the amazing job Rhys and his team did in salvaging as much of the old building as they could, from roof tiles to 400-year-old timbers, in order to make a new home of distinctive character.
Oh, this is such a great room.
The library, as with much of this part of the house, has been entirely recreated from scratch. Getting the details right required some unorthodox detective work.
We did find some bits of what we believe were original Tudor panelling in the local farmhouse, acting as somebody's bed's head, you know, and we were able to actually replicate the panelling from that.
Did you take his bed head?
We did take his bed head, yes.
I hope they asked him first. The same level of detail and craftsmanship continues upstairs in the landing and bedrooms. Much of the original timber has been painstakingly salvaged, repaired and reused. And a new oak frame helps the gentle transition to the new part of the house.
Wow, this is a really different space from the other side of the house.
Yeah.
It's light, it's airy, it's really wide, and you've got stunning views out. The change in the character of the room, going from the medieval part of the house into the new, you would automatically think that that would be quite a harsh transition. It's much more subtle.
Using timber framing in both actually brings them together. We had a palette of materials that we inherited from the historic structure, and we've just felt that actually, to get continuity, we've just pulled those through into the new bit.
And you're constructing it the same way as well. I mean, the guys are on site with chisels, hammers, and just erecting it by hand.
Absolutely.
Exactly how they would have with the original.
Precisely.
The distinction between old and new in this house is clear but subtle. New roof tiles were made in 4 different sizes, and their colours were carefully matched to the old salvaged tiles. The windows, too, are new, but utterly traditional in design. They were made by a small firm in Warwickshire. 400 years ago, glass was expensive and difficult to make in big pieces. So, to form a window, tiny sections would be set in a lattice of lead. It was called a leaded light.
It's a slow process. The leaded light maker slowly builds up the leaded light, pane by pane. It would take him 3 days to do that. They then go into a process of leaded light cementing, which makes them weatherproof. They're then left to set for normally at least 2 weeks. It's then cleaned off, they're buffed up, polished with a real bristle brush. They are good then for the next 150 years.
What could be more characterful than an ancient and authentically crafted home? Unless, of course, you have to physically build the thing.
At times, it seemed it was taking 4 steps back, 1 step forward. When I rebuilt the chimney, I was basically on my hands and knees for weeks and weeks, taking bits of stone out, replacing it with bricks. The traditional method probably took a good 6 times longer, if not more. It's just such a time-consuming job, and you need patience with a saint.
Started on this construction site, I was 17, and by the time we finished, I was 23. Yeah, I was quite proud. I was telling my mates and that, oh, on this 16th century courthouse job, it's better than your flat pack house you're building and stuff like that.
The current tenants are big fans too. A retired army officer, Giles, and his family.
It's almost like a reverse TARDIS, so it looks huge from the outside, but actually when you come in, it's so cleverly configured that nothing's too small, nothing's too large, and it's beautifully crafted as well. So in an idle moment when I've got a toothbrush in my mouth, I mean, I will look at the craftsmanship, and I think that's almost lost these days, and that's what's so wonderful about this house.
There's also a pub just a mile down the road, which is always a good one.
It's incredible what can be achieved when you take the time to understand a building and truly get to know its past. Reese and his team have spent the past 5 years painstakingly restoring this old wreck. And in the process, they've created an architectural masterpiece.
So that completes today's selection from the long list for House of the Year. The Gin Distillery, infused with light and imagination. Coastal House, a marvel of pared-back ruggedness. Old Shed New House that wraps a home around a library. Duncan Cottage, where Georgian meets modern. And the revived ruin of the old courthouse.
5 beautiful homes, like illuminated manuscripts, all embellished with a rich past. The question is, which of them have the RIBA judges decided to put through to the shortlist?
Niall Maxwell, one of the judges, is here with the answer.
You've chosen how many projects for the shortlist?
We've chosen 2, and the first of them is Old Shed, New House.
Old Shed is a model for the future of reusing existing agricultural buildings and turning them into modern dwellings.
The library is a key, powerful room, isn't it?
This is the jewel in the crown for me because it works on so many levels, on 3 sides, all behind the books, it's all mirrored. It's a very clever way of enlarging a room, which is really quite domestic in scale. You're looking at it as an architect going, that's very clever.
Wow.
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 Really, really wonderful news. We're particularly delighted for all the people, Greg and everyone else who made the house happen.
So what's the second project you've shortlisted?
Well, the second one is Coastal House. It is a very clever reimagining of an existing country house. You actually feel like you're a detective trying to work out which bits of the building were original and which bits are new. For a long time they spoke about building a new house and only fairly late in the day realised that they could work with what was there. And therefore it's the skill of the architects who have managed to really redress this house and transform it into something for modern living.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing. Oh my God, cool.
That's brilliant.
Hey,
Fantastic.
thank you. That's just really unexpected and lovely and amazing. And I think for this house, it's very quiet in what it's doing. So it's very exciting that it's been recognised. That's really nice.
So, the bookish barn that is Old Shed New House and the delightfully reworked Coastal House join Red House and Pheasants on the shortlist. We'll be finding out who the overall winner of the RIBA House of the Year is at the end of the series.
A house is a bit like an old photograph album. It can tantalisingly suggest the person who made it, the people who were in it, their stories, and even speak of the time that it was made. But very much unlike photographs, buildings have a physical structure that you can explore and experience, and their stories change. They go on to have a life of their own, providing joy and shelter to countless people for hundreds of years after they're built. Buildings can regenerate, and they can rewrite their own narratives with each generation long after any memories fade. They are quite magical.
Next time, we'll continue our tour of the longlist, looking at extreme houses.
These cantilevers could have worked if they were half the size.
It wouldn't have been so dramatic. You're going to do something once, you might as well make a go of it.
All of us enjoy snooping around other people's houses, don't we? I mean, figuring out how people live, what brand of plug-in air freshener they use, looking at their bookshelves. So I have good news. Grand Design's House of the Year is back.
That means we're snooping around the houses longlisted for the Royal Institute of British Architects House of the Year prize.
What a place! Whoa, whoa, whoa!
So far, we've seen some extraordinary houses in our Dare to be Different category.
People want to reprise what's already been successful. Introducing a new element is really quite difficult.
And some remarkable houses with a past.
I like the crack in the wall.
That's intentional. We thought about that for a while and decided not to spend any money doing anything on that.
With the architect Damien Burrows and design expert Michelle Gunderhin, in this episode, I'm looking at a third category of homes that are all extreme and pioneering.
You're going to do something once, you might as well make a go of it.
At the end of the show, we'll find out which of the spectacular houses on the long list have been shortlisted by the judges.
You're trying to measure apples against pears and sometimes turnips.
Then in the final episode, we'll discover who the winner is of one of the most celebrated prizes for residential architecture, the 2018 House of the Year.
We have the keys, we have the open invitation to look through people's drawers. All you have to do is sit on the sofa.
So far in this series, 4 buildings have made it onto the shortlist. Pheasants, a waterside respite of modernism. The urban superpowered Red House. Old Shed, new house, glamorous and reinvigorated. And the meticulous and resonant Coastal House.
In this programme, we're taking a look at extreme houses. And by that, I mean houses that push at the limits of what's possible in all kinds of ways. Some are base-jumping, adrenaline junkie wingsuit wearers that like leaping off the tallest cliff they can find just for the thrill of it. Others, in a quieter vein, might have the largest collection of toy lawnmowers known to man, or dress up in Civil War clothes at the weekend. I don't know, maybe I'm pushing this analogy too far. Anyway, what they all embody is a burning desire to innovate and to pioneer.
Our first house, tucked away in the quiet Kent countryside, is Black House, a piece of extreme domestic engineering. Most people would be happy with 1 cantilever. This house has got 4 daring spikes of building jutting out into space.
What a piece of theatre.
It was built by Norman and Tina. No surprise that Norman is a retired commercial structural engineer.
The interest was pushing a structure to its extremity, which is what we were doing here in a domestic situation.
Designing a building that didn't have significant structural interest in it, I would feel really quite insulted with my own performance.
Black House is a set of 4 epic cantilevered boxes. In the largest box is an open-plan kitchen. Surrounding a central courtyard are 3 further pushed-out boxes, with a living room, formal dining room, and in the final box, 4 bedrooms. Towering above them all is a study.
Hello, Norman. Hello, Tina.
Hello.
These cantilevers could have worked if they were half the size.
It wouldn't
Rather
have been
wonderfully.
so dramatic. You're going to do something once, you might as well make a go of it. I mean,
You were egging them on then?
absolutely.
Something like that is very expensive to do. Very, very tricky. No doubt, as an engineer for you, just a delight. I can imagine it added considerably to the cost.
By having this concept, you've probably increased it by 50%.
The overall budget?
Yes.
So my internal budget was going down, down, down as this structural cost was going up, up, up.
But inside, there's absolutely no trace of any compromise.
It's compelling, isn't it? Good lit space.
Being in the kitchen is like floating in a great white cloud, looking out to the Kent countryside and the orchard below.
It's all very well as having very architectural, structural thing about cantilevers, but bottom line, it's how you feel in a space and what gives you pleasure. And one of the things that gives me pleasure is we have this inside-outside thing, this compelling view outside, and then we have it again over here behind us.
Ah, the mirror.
When I'm cooking, I can see who's in the room and beyond.
I like that.
Black House impressed the RIBA judges with its crisp, clean lines and thoughtful response to the landscape, which also informed the internal layout, so that each room looks out onto an outdoor space, loosely connected with its function. The kitchen looks out onto an orchard and productive garden. The minimal dining room has views out onto a formal garden, and the casual, cool living room onto a relaxed swimming pool. But the architect explored these functions and relationships much, much more.
So this is how I would have, rather uninventively, designed this building, as a rectangle on this site with 4 functions, 4 different rooms: the kitchen facing out towards the orchard, the dining room facing out towards the formal garden, the sitting room facing the swimming pool, and the bedrooms facing the private little hedge here at the back. But the architect's far more inventive than I am, so what he's done is this. He's shunted out the kitchen to make an enormous cantilever. He's moved the dining room block over here to give it separation, and then placed the sitting room in between the dining room, giving the bedrooms a sort of sense of privacy at the back here. Oh, and look, in so doing, he's made a hole in the middle.
The central courtyard is a cloister. The circulation space of the entire house literally wraps around it and invites the sky in. The boxy organisation of space and function here means there is a powerful clarity to this house.
I like to strip everything down to its absolute basics, and I think, the box is the most pure, simple shape. It's about creating a clarity of organisation.
Have the jury told you what they like about it?
The jury, they came here, and I think they really got what we were talking about in terms of the way that it functions in such a clean way. We had a fairly serious kind of walk around, but then we ended up in the courtyard, and we were spinning on the chairs, and actually, this house is great fun as well. We've had a few parties here.
And when a party's in full swing, the kitchen cantilever fills up with people. A lot of people, in a box floating 7 feet in the air.
I've no trepidation about having 4 or 5 times this number of people in the room. I'd be slightly nervous if they all started jumping up and down in unison.
Keep the music down and you'll be fine. I'm sure you'll be fine. Meantime, I'm looking for the bathroom in the cloistered corridor.
No, yes, that's a door. It's a bedroom. No, it's not one here. Oh, hang on. Oh, there's one here. And another one. It's like the crystal maze. Handles would be nice.
The house took 3 years to finally finish, 2 more years than Norman and Tina had anticipated. Much of the trickiness was brought on by the complexity of the structural engineering.
Talking about the cantilever, some of the technical issues it raises are quite significant. It introduces many more specialist subcontractors. This is not a standard foundation, so it has to be someone that knows about reinforced concrete. The buildings are held down by anchor ties and all sorts of technical things. So you immediately introduce an element of technicality that a normal builder could struggle with. I think our builder did struggle.
It was meant to be completed in 12 months. At 24 months, the builder still hadn't finished and went bust, leaving the site and the job unfinished. Looking back from the comfort of an immaculate home, how are they able to reconcile what they have now with the house's painful struggle of a birth?
Because both of us come from a building background, one would imagine that a project of this size would be simple, straightforward, and that couldn't have been less true. It was an embarrassment that our building was...
How did we get in this situation?
Painful as building this house might have been, what Tina and Norman have achieved here is, I think, staggering.
Do you regret pushing those parameters at the height, the size?
No. There are certain things which you have to push, even although it's difficult.
Would you have the gumption to build a shrine to all the values and beliefs that you hold dear? Because that's exactly what they've done. In this building, they have made manifest all their great loves of design, furniture, furnishings, engineering. And it is heroic.
We have 3 more maverick pioneering homes to see.
Oh, it carries on inviting you up.
Until we discover which have been lucky enough to make it to the shortlist for the RIBA 2018 House of the Year.
The inspiration for a building can come from anywhere, from people, objects, or the place itself. It's where the story of the building starts. Here at Downley House, designed by Bird's Portsmouth Russell, whose eccentric house in North London made the shortlist last year, here the hallway is inspired by a wine barrel. That is more like it. But our next house, well, it was inspired by something you can't see.
On the streets of East London, the inspiration for the house I'm going to look at takes its cue from music, apparently. This is Vex, and it is out there. It was somehow inspired by this piece of music, Vexations by Eric Satie. It's made up of 3 large concrete drums, each of which houses a different function. The ground floor contains a lower-level studio space, above which are 2 bedrooms. The third and largest floor has an open-plan living room and kitchen, while at the very top of the house there's a private roof terrace. It was designed by architects Stephen Chance and Wendy De Silva.
Hi. Hi. Wendy, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Hi.
Yeah, good to meet you. Hi.
Kevin.
Good to see you, and you both. Standing here, it's quite a monumental thing.
You're right.
Quite majestic. Could you really be inspired by a piece of piano music to build a building?
Yeah, I think you can. The score is very short and it repeats 840 times.
The idea behind the music, which is about movement and fluidity and sort of spirals, this building had to be somehow informed by that.
Do I have to take a tour of the building 840 times?
I'll tell you what, to get the full experience, I'm afraid.
You'll keep looping and looping and looping till you get to the top.
Yeah.
These looping, swirling shapes were made using enormous wooden moulds or shuttering, filled with concrete to form the walls and floors. A layer of corrugated steel wrapped inside the shuttering cast the rippling surface. The builders, Nigel Fanshawe and Barry Phillips, had never done anything like it.
Concrete days weren't happy days, were they? Quite stressful, really. Obviously, it's in the back of your mind, isn't it, that
if it goes,
it could go wrong. So.
And if it goes, it's only going to end up on the floor.
Don't forget, we're doing this in one continuous circle, so we only get one go at it.
It would just have to be ripped down if it had gone wrong.
No, there was no plan B. It had to work.
It had to work.
we put a lot of work into getting it to work.
Luckily, it did, though this triumph of the extreme took years. The judges praised the experimental approach Vex had taken, its uniqueness and its honesty. It is both raw and decorative, brutalist and frilly, both outside and in. You understand what this place is made of, concrete and steel mesh. It pushes at the boundaries of design and comfort.
So this is the
bedroom.
It's very well lit.
But the house gets softer and more elegant the higher you go up.
Beautiful oak floor, very soft.
The bedrooms on the first floor are domestic, almost cosy, with fine views out onto the street. To spiral upwards is like climbing the winding stairs of a medieval cathedral until you reach the top of the tower.
So the top floor is living, yeah?
Living, dining, space and a balcony on the next floor.
A great slab. Ooh! Ooh! And it carries on inviting you up. Oh, this is the deck. It goes very private.
Where you can look at the stars or sunbathe. And then we can bring light in, for example, through this roof light here.
Oh, yeah. A little oculus. That's nice.
It works a bit like a sundial. The sun comes through and you see this sort of circle of sun moving across.
You're reminded, of course, of that kind of wheeling nature of the building.
Yeah.
Yes, through.
Wendy and Steve weren't just the architects of this wonderful whirling project. They actually built Vex as developers.
So why not just stick some very nice genteel flats up?
That's not really what we do. When we act as clients or developers, it's because it creates an opportunity for us to do something that we want to do.
We still have to do it within the envelope of funding and making it work and paying the loans back and everything else. But actually, you know, if you set out to do it, you get something extra. It's really quite a rich way of doing it.
A one-off bespoke project, so we don't have the fear of having sort of 50 flats to flog or something like that. We've got one completely unique building, and we just need one appreciative person who's going to come along and love it.
They haven't found the one appreciative person to buy it quite yet, but they now have tenants, the Hermans, who currently rent the building. They've been living here for 9 months now and have learned to embrace the building's minimalist character.
We had to get rid of 80% of our stuff because there's just no storage here. And actually it's a very nice way of decluttering your life.
We have a more simple life here. Yeah, much more simple, minimalistic. It works for us.
This house is one big experiment for those who live in it and the architects who made it. It's inspired others to be similarly avant-garde, like Scanner, a world-renowned ambient composer who worked with Wendy and Steve to create a piece of music inspired by the building.
Wendy videoed the guys pouring the concrete through these giant tubes into the construction, and I thought, it sounds amazing. I've used that original recording and started to play it as notes, and the rhythm comes from them just hammering on something.
So Scanner's piece of music for this building, made from this building, is, of course, beautiful, resonant, and very contemplative. But I have actually composed my own response, which, for an orchestra, would be scored for tom-toms, tubular bells, and harp. But here, it's the building.
This building has also helped transform the neighbourhood by rescuing a plot that had become an eyesore and rubbish dump.
This plot was just derelict garages. People had started to dump things there. There was a bit of a rat problem, so it's getting to be a bit of an eyesore. Yeah, then Steve and Wendy, the architects, started to progress with the building. I'm glad to see the land being put to good use.
I don't think it fits in, but I don't care. I just think how wonderful to have such an interesting building in our street.
I just love the fact that somebody has had such a strong vision for the plot and what it could be. I'm quite proud to live opposite, actually.
You know, when somebody tells you about a project like this, your first reaction is probably going to be, well, that sounds a bit pretentious. Then you get to explore the building, and there's a moment you discover just how good and exciting and playful it is. They say, don't they, that every great master of their craft must not simply be excellent at what they do, but they should also be able to have fun with it.
Next up, a wild and windy 21st century croft house.
It really was something else when it blows here. The site toilet ended up being blown 50 metres down the beach.
This is nice, isn't it? The gentle rolling hills, beautiful manicured landscape. Not for everyone, mind. You see, for some, the wild, rugged, rocky and windswept is infinitely preferable.
In a far-flung part of Scotland is the next house in our extreme category. Damien Burrows went to have a look.
We all yearn for some peace and quiet once in a while. But what if you wanted to make that a permanent reality and build your home in a place like this?
Well, you'd want to build a house like this. Lockside, a quiet, restrained and almost camouflaged home in the wild. It has burnt Scottish larch cladding, dry stone walls. It looks like it's grown out of the ground. What appears to be a set of 3 finely crafted sheds huddled together is in fact one home. Inside this 21st century croft, there are 2 guest bedrooms, an open-plan kitchen and dining area, a living room that looks out onto the loch, and hidden away at the back of the house is a master bedroom. Lochside was commissioned by Michel, an artist whose work is inspired by nature and dramatic landscapes.
I tend to be drawn to kind of empty, barren places. I just like that sense of freedom that you get. It is a completely different lifestyle living in a place like this. It's quite physically hard work.
Michelle, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Nice
to meet you.
What an incredible house. It doesn't appear like one single dwelling. It's almost like a little community of buildings.
Yes, I felt it was important to break it up just so that it sat more comfortably into the landscape.
To actually get this house built, I mean, it's an off-track road to actually get to the site. It's so far removed.
I think when I first started, I didn't really think about the practicalities too much. I kind of jumped in. I was so enthusiastic about this amazing place. At one point, we did consider bringing things in by sea because it actually would be a lot easier, but it would have worked out too expensive. So in the end, we just designed everything to be small enough to fit onto the back of a trailer to come down the track. And I suppose the whole project really was designed around that problem. And also getting people here, because there's not many local craftsmen. And when we initially tendered, we wanted to get 5 tenders, and we just couldn't get 5 tenders. We ended up with 2.
It wasn't easy getting services here either. So the house is completely off-grid, powered by the sun with water pulled up from a borehole. It's a self-sufficient home, and inside...
Wow.
Off-grid has never looked so pared back and beautiful. White oiled timber, rough textured plaster, and rooms that are delightful and modest.
I kept emphasising to the architect that I wanted simple. I didn't want big spaces. I wanted something that would be very comfortable and livable in. Everything seems to just flow from one thing to the next. I think the change in the height of the ceiling helps as well, because you do get that sense of the different spaces. They're still connected, but you feel the differentiation of morning space to daytime space and evening space.
And then you go straight from this, and the view just pulls you down here. Ah, this is lovely. I love how you get this real sense of height.
I love being able to see the trees through the windows there. And the morning sun comes through that window as well, so you get the view that way. And then obviously looking out onto the water.
Lochside House made the longlist because the judges were blown away by the material choices, the scale, and the integration of the building into its wonderful wild setting. This beautiful location also gave Tom Miller, the architect, all the inspiration he needed.
The roofs echo the mountains that dominate the skyline here. These walls around us pick up the horizontal terraces of the sedimentary rocks that outcrop all around.
Is this just about one of the most extreme environments that you've created at home?
Oh, absolutely. It really was something else when it blows in. The site toilet, which had something like 6 or 7 bags of concrete in the bottom of it, ended up being blown 50 metres down the beach. They had to tie the scaffolding boards onto the scaffolding because otherwise they would blow off. And the worst thing is to look around and find the scaffolding board behind you is gone. You don't want that to happen.
Compound those elemental forces with the midge.
Midges, yeah. The contractor, he thought midges was one of the most terrifying bits of it.
The midges were horrific. When we first started digging the ground, you disturb the ground, and that's when the midges are at their worst. We ended up hats, midgie net on, we had gloves on.
Duct tape round the
taped
sleeve.
up to our sleeves so they could not get in when I discovered a hole in my midgie net. That was the worst bit for me on the job.
The weather during the build was challenging.
Whenever you listen to the radio and they were saying storm coming in, you knew it was going to be worse.
But amazingly enough, every time there was a site meeting, it was a lovely day.
Yes.
The architect never suffered any of it.
Any house built here has to be super resilient. So to protect the wood cladding, the builders charred the timber. Burning the surface of the wood forms a weather-resistant barrier against the lashing wind and rain. But in an environment as remote as this, the builders had to make a kiln to cook it in with what they had available.
So we have paving slabs and breeze blocks and a couple of blow torches. They're angled so that as you push the wood through the cavity here, through the hole, the flame circles round the timber. We've never done it before, so there's a lot of trial and quite a few errors till you got it right. That's a lovely one, nice and even, front and back.
Lochside isn't just where Michelle lives, she also works here too, in a studio a stone's throw from her house. Also designed by Tom, her architect.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a great view, isn't it?
Would it not have been easier just to build the annex on the side of the house?
Partly I wanted to have a separate work area, and also the work I do is quite messy, so it's better not to trace clay into the house.
Having this house and having this workspace, how has it changed how you actually live?
I feel very settled here. I find that I don't want to go anywhere. I just stay here and work or sketch, and yeah, I'm quite happy.
To build in this remote and often harsh environment takes a mammoth effort of perseverance and sheer determination. But the results can be incredible. Michelle and her team have created a truly remarkable home that completely belongs in its landscape.
You'd be forgiven for thinking that the houses on the long list are the preserve of an exclusive clientele, yeah? But the ideas pioneered here are already influencing popular housing.
Our design expert, Michelle Gunderhin, is off to see one such large development in East Anglia, which mixes private and affordable housing.
This is Aura, a volume housing development on the outskirts of Cambridge that recently won a 2018 RIBA East Award. But what's really interesting to me is that 40% of this housing is classified as affordable.
This is beautiful architecture for everyone. Aura is a development of 159 apartments and 235 new houses, where average wage earners can own a share of their home. But there are no dull developer houses here, no soulless cookie-cutter homes. There's a real mix. Some residents inhabit sleek white boxes that float above the landscape. Others live in smartly designed garden blocks. The architect behind all of this was Mike Jameson.
So we worked to create house types and apartment types that respond to the setting. So houses that overlook the park have a different feel from, say, the houses that you find in one of the courtyards, or a house or apartment that overlooks the mature plantations of trees.
Well, it's wonderful because we know today that those are the things that are really important for people, like a connection to nature and natural daylight and a feeling of expansiveness.
Those things can come at a hefty price. Yet Aura was affordable enough for two first-time buyers, Shane and his partner, Chloe, to get a foot on the housing ladder.
We have a lovely wraparound outdoor balcony, and we have really high ceilings and nice floor-to-ceiling windows. And all of these things combined made the flat feel a lot bigger than it is, and really kind of brought in the outdoor and indoor together and really let us enjoy the space we had.
And we've managed to make a few people jealous, which has been really nice.
Another development, aesthetically not to everyone's taste, is the Stone Age Clerkenwell Close in East London. 8 apartments and an office. It's a small-scale experiment using a stone exoskeleton on the outside to support the building. The architect's hoping to try it out on a larger housing scheme.
How does this actually hold the building up?
Very simply, it's by gravity. So big pieces of stone are the columns and beams, and behind there...
Suddenly a bit nervous.
Well, there are no stainless steel or other methods of pinning any of this together. It's one piece on top of another. Ultimately, this is about a quarter of the price of doing a concrete or steel framed structure.
By saving money on the outside, Armin has been able to spend more on the internal fit-out. There's polished concrete and there are oak doors which slide, slot and fold together. Putting the structural support on the outside means more space inside too.
Every single detail of this apartment block has been agonised over. And it might look a bit like an ancient stone ruin, but this small-scale exercise in ingenuity might just be a way to build bigger blocks for us all.
We're almost at the end of our tour of trailblazing houses across the UK. We've got just one more remarkable building to see before we find out which of these homes will be swept up onto the shortlist for the 2018 House of the Year. Taking things to excess can be a really bad idea, can't it? I mean, drinking, eating too much, working too hard. But buildings really benefit from that rigour, obsession, absolute clarity of focus, where every idea is worked through to the most minute of details. I'm just going to close my eyes for a minute.
Rigour and obsessiveness are qualities possessed by our next house in Northern Ireland. Outside Belfast, among the gentle rolling hills, something pointy has emerged.
Now that is how you cut a shape into the landscape.
This is Maison Wedge. Striking, angular, beautiful. It was designed by architect John Lavery.
It really started off with this idea as a sculptural object for living in. That's what I wanted to achieve with the project.
John has designed the building around a single shape, the wedge. There is the living wedge with kitchen diner and downstairs sitting area, above which is a lounge for enjoying the views. And then there is the sleeping wedge with 3 bedrooms. Other wedges of note include a gate wedge, window wedges, a garden wedge, and a patio wedge. Clients for this meticulous and sculptural project are the owners, Denise, a manager in a medical company, and Henry, who works for a local business.
When we commit to something, we've seen it through.
Well, we're both quite sort of similar that way. We quite like an organised routine. We like to plan things.
I do like things to run exactly how they should and make sure that everything is spot on. I've been told I'm more Swiss than the Swiss when it comes to detail. That's fine. I'll take that one.
Hey, Henry, how are you?
Henry.
Hey,
How are you?
Denise.
Nice
Good
to
to
meet
meet you. The building itself has got such a strong presence, these almost battling angles. What was your original brief to the architect?
Push the boundaries as much as possible. We told them, take what you normally do and forget about that and basically
Start again.
Start again. We didn't want something that was just here. We wanted something that was, I'm here.
Here?
Henry and Denise were inspired to build the house after living and working abroad in Switzerland for 4 years.
It was really about doing something that reflected what we had seen in Switzerland, so we really liked the modern, contemporary architecture.
We just like the simplicity of it, the nice, natural, clean lines, the sharp looks.
The judges were struck by the energy of the shapes here, and of course loved the careful detailing developed to hide anything that might distract from the building's uncompromising angles. So, no unsightly satellite dishes here. The guttering and pipework have all been cleverly concealed on the roof. And on the inside...
Thank you. Oh, wow. What an arrival space.
Well, the same extreme hygienic rigour is carried through. In the kitchen and dining room, there's not an architrave or skirting board in sight, only more wedges and a secret door.
And in you go.
Ah, perfect. Why hasn't every house got one of these?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It works really well, and it's nice because we can just hide everything away. And,
great for dinner parties.
Yeah, exactly. You can do all the prep out here, and then you just come through to
that. You've had enough, you can just close the doors. Job done.
Thoughtful design is everywhere in the house. A secret office for Denise in the sleeping wedge. A mezzanine viewing box at the top of the house. And then there's the downstairs toilet.
We've tried to keep it nice and light and airy. So again, we've gone against the grain, I guess, putting a nice clear window in. Just give us a loo with a view. You have to take your chances, I guess.
All part of the fun in this wild and wonderful, highly personal home. There's plenty for Denise and Henry to enjoy in their own wedge wonderland.
And here, great big picture window, and then wedges within wedges.
This wedge is credit to our architect's wife. She's also an architect. And we were trying to decide how to finish off this area. And rather than putting in just a flat finish to it, she suggested we stay with the wedge theme. So that's why it is.
There's always room for one more.
Denise and Henry planned their project for 3 years before they started work. But no sooner had they laid the foundations, disaster struck.
Unfortunately, the construction company went into administration after 3 or 4 months.
It's quite difficult at the time because obviously everything one day's moving along and then all of a sudden, bang, everything's taken away from you. And we're people, we like being in control, and when everything's moving along, it's great. But then all of a sudden, all we've got is a concrete slab in a field. You're sort of having to think, whoa, you know, where do we go from here?
Denise and Henry managed to find a company to take on the project and build their house and difficult-shaped roof.
It is a challenging shape, so it's not only sloped as a wedge, but it also has a twist within it as well.
To make the wonky wedge shape with a twist, the builders had to cut each piece of timber for the structure individually on site. It took 3 months to make the wedge roofs, the most complicated and technically challenging wedges of all.
All the time, I'm hearing wedge, wedge, wedge.
The key thing, Damien, was very simple. Why come up with a concept and not try and follow it the whole way right through? So this is a very different house. The concept of maison wedge and this sculptural object for living in had to be followed right down.
Not everyone would follow it to this degree, perhaps, but here the rigorous pursuit of one idea has produced a seriously good building.
Henry and Denise are the architectural equivalent of storm chasers. They've taken the geometry of the wedge and quite simply gone to town with it, creating an outstanding piece of architecture. Long live the wedge.
All the houses in this series are possibles to win this year's prestigious RIBA House of the Year award. But what does it take to scoop the grand prize?
Set within the rolling chalk hills of the Aylesbury Vale is Flint House, which won House of the Year in 2015, frankly because of its marvellous geological construction. The judges thought it a shining example of material and architectural design at its best. It is a building inspired directly by the local geology, in particular a great seam of flint that runs beneath the site. Flint House sits on the Wadston Manor estate and was commissioned by Lord Rothschild.
Credit for the beautiful place it is today goes to the architect, Charlotte Skin-Catling. It was her vision to make this building look like a rock coming out of the landscape.
It's currently inhabited by the art historian Tom Campbell, who's here on a short-term fellowship scheme.
When I first told a friend that I was coming to the Flint House They said, ooh, that's a really uncomfortable building. There are all these sharp edges. You know, you'll have to wear padding. And, you know, when you arrive, it is a very austere, geometric building. But as I've discovered living here, it's not grandiose.
The rooms inside are in fact on a very human scale, and they're modest. Low ceilings on the ground floor draw the eye out towards the landscape views. There are almost no doors either, which makes exploring the house an experience in itself.
It's not a series of rooms, it's a series of interlocking spaces that draw the eye through and draw you through physically.
But perhaps the greatest quality of Flint House is how it's been designed to fit into where it is.
The idea of it looking like a rock by this water is what makes it a unique property. And I think that's why it was a worthy winner.
We've seen 4 daring buildings that push at the limits in their different ways, but only 2 can progress.
Will it be the big, boxy and beautiful Black House? The enigmatic concrete Vex inspired by music? The windswept wonder that is Lochside? Or the sharp sculptural maison Wedge? Takero Shimazaki, head of the judges, reveals the first building that's made it onto the shortlist for the 2018 RIBA House of the Year.
So what house have you shortlisted from this category?
Vex.
Vex.
Vex. It's fun, isn't it? It's really kind of quite rare these days to see something like this. The ambition of the project and the kind of the concrete that's going around, and it's a piece of sculpture in the city. It's a really refreshing to see proper bit of concrete in London. I mean, that's good.
Proper bit of concrete.
I'm a fan of concrete.
Fantastic.
That's a surprise.
Great news. People come and they're first surprised, and then quite often they end up with a smile on their face, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
And what's the second house that you shortlisted?
This is Lochside House. It's obviously a gorgeous, gorgeous setting, but I think we were all touched by the architectural kind of humbleness of it. You know, it's not kind of shouting, look at me, look at me. It just sort of effortlessly just sits there. The materials, like the stone, they're large, they come from the area, so it's kind of very much a local product.
Michelle, the main reason I was calling is that they've just explained that your house hasn't just got onto the long list, it's actually been shortlisted now.
Oh, wow, that's
Is that extraordinary? Absolutely wonderful news. It's fantastic to be shortlisted, absolutely wonderful. It's one of those projects that you just want to make the most of. You want to give it your best because the site is worth giving it your absolute best.
So the rugged Lochside and wonderful winding concrete Vex house go through to the shortlist.
Like all the great heroic explorers, the pioneers of architecture risk all in the quest to build something powerful, something extreme. They go where no developer ever would. They see opportunity where others only see limitation, and they don't conform. They set the rules by which others follow. For great architecture to develop and prosper, we need more of them.
Next time in our final programme, we'll be completing our tour of the long list, looking at a category of homes which celebrate their materials and craftsmanship.
That is one hell of a window.
That's 3 sliding doors. They weigh half a tonne each.
But how high are they?
They're 6 metres.
We'll also be discovering the final homes to get onto the shortlist, and then finding out which of these amazing buildings will be crowned the winner of the RIBA House of the Year 2018.
We are a nation obsessed with our homes. We like nothing more than to browse estate agents' windows, especially when we're on holiday. So curious are we about other people's places. So, once again, you're in luck. We're here to give you a guided tour of the country's finest new homes.
We're on the final leg of our tour of the long list of remarkable homes furiously competing to win the Royal Institute of British Architects House of the Year Award 2018.
Wow, yeah, tall. There's no inkling outside.
So far, 6 homes have made it through to the shortlist.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
There are just 4 homes left, grouped in this programme under the theme of interesting materials and craftsmanship.
Oh, now that's remarkable. 2 glorious voids.
I'll be looking at these exceptional homes with the architect Damien Burrows.
Ah, perfect.
And the design expert Michelle Gunderhin.
It's all just so gorgeously aligned and neat. I love it.
Towards the end of this programme, we'll find out who bags the last remaining place on the shortlist before we discover who is the overall winner of House of the Year.
So, sit back, kick off your fashionable felt slippers, relax, and prepare to be inspired by some great architecture.
So far, the buildings that have made it onto the shortlist for House of the Year have embraced everything from the magnificent to the sculptural and small scale. There are 2 houses that dared to be different, the Zigzag Pheasants and the Brazen Red House. There's a pair that embrace extremes, the wild and windswept Lochside and the experimental Vex. And 2 houses with a past, the reinvented barn that is Old Shed New House, and the restored Coastal House.
In this programme, we're looking at houses that explore materials and craftsmanship. For them, brick, stone, wood and concrete aren't just the workaday stuff of structure and cladding, but materials to explore and play with, the ingredients for individual and sometimes eccentric expression. So some are well-groomed, snappy dresses with not a hair out of place. Others are wilder, more anarchic, just got out of bed types. It doesn't matter. They're all outstanding pieces of craftsmanship.
Our first example of that outstanding craftsmanship is in Berkshire, where materials have been delicately put together to make something magical. Michelle Gunderhin is taking a look.
Ooh. It's all just so gorgeously aligned and straight and neat. I love it.
This is Berkshire House, a sharply dressed longlister. Everything is poised here, perfectly in place. There are no creases or crumples. It all lines up immaculately. Every room here demonstrates the faultless finesse that impressed the RIBA judges, who found the house a joy to walk through, full of minimal detailing to admire. They called it a shining example of carefully considered, painstakingly crafted architecture. There are 5 bedrooms with a master bedroom on one side and 4 bedrooms on the other. Downstairs, a kitchen, family room and sitting room sit either side of the central hall. Simple. This crafted gem was commissioned by Gary and Sam, who ever since they were young harboured a vision for a beautifully made, clean-cut home.
Thank you.
When I left college, I worked in a fish factory. I did bricklaying and hod carrying.
The dream was to have a very modern, very minimalistic home.
It never seemed possible in the early days. We've always had these sort of images in our head as to what it would look like.
After 3 years working with their architects, this is the result. the dream of a lifetime writ large,
Oh, wow.
especially in their great hall.
That is one hell of a window.
Yeah, actually, that's 3 sliding doors.
How high are they?
So they're 6 metres.
The effect is to draw you magnetically to the vertical views through these double-height glass doors.
I can't even begin to imagine how something like that gets winched into place.
They're half a tonne each, and it was tough getting them in.
Do you know, I was away on business, fortunately, because the thought of it was quite terrifying. But it was so important to us to have so much glass to maximise the view. I was quite happy I wasn't here.
The glass doors were made in Switzerland, heat-treated, shatter-tested, and with an almost invisible frame. The nerve-shredding task of installing these whopping panes of glass fell to the builder, Eamon Coyle.
The glazed doors are probably the biggest set of doors that I've ever installed. The actual glazing panels themselves, we had to bring those in with a crane on suckers. That was a challenge as well.
I can imagine. Overall, the scale of this house is breathtaking. But for a large wooden object in the landscape, it doesn't feel at all oversized or out of place here.
There's something tremendously monumental about this building, and yet it doesn't feel massive or heavy. It sits very lightly in its location. And I think that's to do with the materials, whether the brick or this gorgeous wood and the craftsmanship that's gone into all this alignment. I mean, you feel like you could just sit here for hours. It's just so soothing.
This soothing calm radiates through the whole house, even into rooms that you'd expect to be jammed full of stuff.
You've managed to keep your kitchen as pristine as the rest of the house. I mean, how are you pulling that off?
I've got secret cupboards.
Sam is a home economist, but here her favourite place to prepare food is in a cupboard.
So I can literally make coffee, make toast, whip up a cake, and then when I'm done, I just shut the door.
Shut it all away again.
This is the magic electric cupboard.
Abracadabra. The tricks just keep on coming.
We have a secret bar as well. Shall I show you? Because we do like to have a party. So when you arrive, you open the doors.
Fantastic.
And off we go.
And what does every party house need?
Ladies and gents, obviously. This house is constantly full of people, and really nobody wants to queue for the loo, do they?
It took 17 months to build this house, nearly half of which was spent on the cladding, which wraps around the entire building. The architects, Gregory Phillips and James Shelton, specified timbers of exactly equal widths that were spaced precisely.
We set this whole building out on this kind of 75mm timber and a 15mm gap, and we've actually got that around all 4 sides of the house.
This big governed the whole house?
Yeah, it's a lot of drawing, and it's a lot of time measuring, and it's a lot of dialogue with the builders and the actual workmen doing the physical timber work.
And those workmen were Nick Flack and Jason Elliott, who had to fix 2,000 pieces of timber to boards and then fix them to the building.
Never ever done nothing like this before, no. And most people will never ever do anything like it again. It was cladding mania. It was everywhere. On the balconies, and there was panels.
Seats.
Yeah, seats. We made seating areas, and there was panels inside in the that bedroom, wasn't
Yeah,
there?
there was,
and
and in the main hallway as
the
well.
main
3
hallway.
panels in the hallway.
Yeah, yeah, it was repetitive.
This house couldn't be more different from what was here before, Gary's parents' home. They sold the house to Gary and Sam when they downsized, who then knocked it down.
It does sound quite extreme, buying your in-laws' property, knocking it down and building your dream home, but they were so proud of us and they're so thrilled for us, aren't they?
And so supportive. I mean, they're wonderful.
Even when you knocked it down, though, did they know that that was part of the deal? When
We
you
had them round for dinner. I fed them lots of wine.
That normally does the trick. I don't think Gary's parents, or anyone for that matter, could resent them for building such a beautiful home. It's a robust example of the 21st century arts and crafts house.
We've got a big family and we do want to carry it on through the generations. You know, this will be here long after we're gone, and hopefully the kids and hopefully their kids will enjoy it then as well.
It's so nice to see our parents so happy here. The only thing I don't like is that I had to leave to go to uni.
I wake up most mornings and I can't believe I'm living here, and it's still not fully settled in. It's just amazing.
It's not just this big grey modern building, which is what it looks like from an outsider's perspective. We've turned it into our home, and I think that's what makes it so amazing.
The beauty of a building like this lies in its extraordinary attention to detail. You can tell it's been a real labour of love, certainly for the owners, but also for the builders. You can feel that in every brick and every carefully placed piece of cladding. And for me, that's what gives it its real power.
Coming up, 3 more wonderfully crafted homes.
If that looks like a shed, I'm happy with
You're
that.
happy, you're
I'm
happy.
with that.
Yeah.
Before we find out which one has made the shortlist, and then finally discover who is the overall winner of House of the Year 2018.
With the right materials, in the right hands, an everyday object can become a thing of beauty. That's the definition of craftsmanship, really. Taking raw materials and skills honed over thousands of hours of experience to produce something extraordinary.
Nowhere is that kind of craftsmanship thriving more than in Northern Ireland. Belfast is now a city with a fast-growing culture of making. And it's spilling out of the workshops onto the streets.
Is it a shed? Is it 2 sheds? Is it an artisanal bakery?
Nope, no croissants here. This is number 37. In this skillfully made building, ordinary materials have been made beautiful through the magic of invention. Offcuts of timber have been craftily used to strike a perfect shadow line at the top of the building. Rainwater downpipes are sculptural. Inside, standard plywood is transformed into designer furniture. And all this ingenuity is packed into one tiny building. Number 37 is the smallest house on the long list. Under the left roof is a double-height kitchen and living room. Under the right-hand roof, a shower room and bedroom. A mezzanine bedroom sits above, overlooking the entire space below. Its designers and owners are the husband and wife architects Grania and Alistair Cumming, who are planning a radical life change.
Our children have left home when they're grown up, and we've decided to effectively downsize and declutter.
It's really just back up the dumper truck and put everything in it and go back to where we were, maybe when we were students.
Fed up with being adults, Grania and Alistair have designed their experimental student digs in a style of building they both adore.
I love sheds, I love buildings made of wood, I think everybody does.
Yeah.
And if that looks like a shed, I'm happy with
You're
that.
happy, you're
I'm
happy.
with that.
Yeah. What's the wood?
It's Scottish larch.
Scottish larch.
Yes, it's almost impossible to drill through, so we had to import fixings from Austria. They're specially designed to go through this kind of really dense resinous wood that lasts 100 years.
37 is a hard-wearing and low-cost home. Grania and Alistair built this beautiful house for only £100,000. You'd never know it was built on a super tight budget, at least not from the front. But round the back of the house...
I'd say the treatment of the boundary and the landscaping is minimal.
We got some bark from Gumtree and put it down ourselves for £70.
That's your landscape.
Yeah,
that was your
just-
landscape.
Yeah.
It's another thing you kind of come to expect, I suppose, on a, council bed at the side of a road. But
Or
to
a
actually,
festival.
It's got a great festival smell.
yeah, thank you.
Let the party begin. Oh, that's remarkable. The RIBA judges admired how this small house refused to feel enclosed, delivering views between spaces and lots of connection to the outside. They've squashed a lot in here. A central living area, a bedroom under the stairs and shower room to the right, plus a mezzanine bedroom on top. Amazing for a house of only 56 square metres.
I expected this building to be somewhat more squeezed, you know, with a lot more accommodation kind of pushed into these big triangular spaces, but there's just two glorious voids. Big.
It makes a small space seem much bigger. It's almost like magic.
Every element, wherever possible, has been scaled down to be the smallest it can be, while still being usable, like the stairs, which double as a chalkboard.
I like that.
Yes.
Onto which you've very conveniently drawn the building.
Yeah. Very badly.
That's great.
The stair is exactly what meets building control.
It ain't big, is it?
Technically, you cannot fit a stair into a narrower space than that,
to
to get upstairs. So
the
everything has been Rubik's cubed in.
There are ideas here which you'd find in so the small apart hotels, and you've kind of designed the central kitchen here, which sort of bleeds into shelving and cupboards. How big is your
It's
sink?
minuscule.
It's not very big.
No.
But how big does it need to
Had
be?
to be, yeah.
So there are kind of questions where you keep asking, how much do you actually need?
If you said, where is the kitchen in this house? It's this bit, the metal bit.
Room enough for a kettle and a pot noodle, maybe a casserole. It took 12 months for Grania and Alistair to build their remarkable 100 grand micro home, but their micro budget didn't stop them having fun. For the bathroom, they designed their own door signs.
I do like the logo on the door.
It's helpful for navigating around our small house.
They also designed their own tiles, inspired by local bluebells.
It's a charming way in which the building is kind of personalised, isn't it?
Yes. It's a creative way of working within the constraints of our £100,000 budget to do something special there.
Yeah, there's something original and made especially for the building. But
Yeah.
Their creativity works its way into every corner of the house. One single sheet of plywood becomes a multi-purpose work-cum-dining table, designed especially to fit into this small space.
This building is designed for downsizing. How little do you need? And you don't have to forego good design, and it can be an uplifting experience on a low budget, and that's what I think we've done here.
So, how does this jaunty shack go down with the neighbours?
There's a lot of people coming down to look at the house, and people walk their dogs, but, you know, are they really walking their dogs down to the end, you know?
I'm just looking at it.
Yeah, and cars drive down and come back.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I do. I really like it. I mean, you would need to like it because it's sort of, from our front living room, we get a view of it.
I must say, initially, when this first went up, we began to have our reservations. I thought, oh, it's just going to be a great shed. What are they going to do with it? But I think we've been won over because it is original, it's different.
Could you imagine yourself ever living in a building like that, or?
Can I imagine it? It might not be my first choice, I have to say. But...
Number 37 is a little wooden building where simple materials are used to create the experience you might expect from a much bigger, more expensive house.
This is a modest home. It delivers everything it has to just the right level. It is the just enough home. And we don't have enough of those. Most buildings, regardless of their size and shape, are made using the same basic materials: steel, brick, concrete, glass, timber. The building blocks of all our homes, literally. But it's not just the materials in themselves that matter. It's what you do with them that counts.
Our next house does things I'd never thought possible with its simple materials in the most unexpected of guises. Damien Burrows has found our next long lister on this traditional suburban street in Surrey. This is Oatlands.
You sure this is the right address?
An old 1930s house, red brick, tile roof. It doesn't look like a cutting-edge piece of architecture.
Hi, is it Barry and Rosie?
Hello, yes, it is.
Wondering if I'd got the right place.
In you come.
Ah, that's more like it.
Oh, wow. Bang, it's amazing.
Discouraged by the planners from changing the front, Barry and Rosie have gone to town at the back, crafting simple materials like pale brick, glass and wood to make a somewhat radical extension that is the essence of cool and minimal. There's a sleek sitting room, a new bright kitchen, and cool, calm playroom. They've also refurbished the old 1930s house, refreshing their living room and installing a home cinema. Oatlands is a thorough reimagining of the traditional suburban home. The open-plan living room and kitchen are all contained within the modern extension, with a master bedroom on its first floor. In the garden, there's a separate studio space for Rosie.
It's almost like modern architecture is exploding out of the back of your house.
Yeah, it's a really modern day application of what was at the front.
We wanted to add something very different to the back of the house because it's very unassuming at the front, you know, using lots of different materials to try and really bring the back of the building to life, really.
The judges admired the architectural explosion. They said the pale bricks gave the house a sculptural quality and praised the delightful series of spaces inside, illuminated by skylights and by walls of glass through which the interior concrete floor seems to flow out into the garden.
Here, you've got a very clever detail, and all I can see is just the way that it slices through the vegetation.
Part of that is to have the room feeling like it's part of the outside, and we're very keen not to show too much sort of aluminium detail around the side where the glass sets in, so it feels like you're stepping out into the garden.
Yeah. In that corner and looking out onto the oak trees, it really is the best seat in the house.
The extension doesn't just connect to its setting, but softly morphs into it. The architects broke up its shape and played down the relief of the brickwork with flush mortar.
It was very important to sort of bleed the mortar slightly over the brick, so it allowed that to sort of merge with the landscape more than what it would have done with a traditional kind of brick.
Especially with the studio, because that sits in the garden and is sat and is pushed down into the landscape. I think that was quite an important object to kind of get right.
What could be more ideal for a landscape designer like Rosie than to have your office in this bucolic setting?
It's a wonderful space to work in. It's got views right onto the garden and it reflects the sort of architecture of the buildings.
You would normally tone the architecture down a little, maybe use it as an opportunity to save a little on the budget. No.
We weren't going to compromise the style and the reflection of, you know, the main house.
You just need a little tunnel from one to the other.
Oatlands is a changed building from what it was when Barry and Rosie bought it. A rundown 1930s house stuck in a time warp.
The same family were living here for about 80 years, so the whole building had been untouched in its original state. There was one radiator in the place. The floors and the main parts were built up through the different decades, so underneath it had the sort of fake black and white
thing, yeah.
marble and then magnolia carpet.
It finished on paisley.
That's right, paisley.
Floor strata.
Yes, it was.
The work at Oatlands exploits the best of the old house and connects it better to the garden, opening up views that weren't there before. But all this remarkable design still remains hidden behind its old 1930s facade. It leaves many local residents understandably confused.
No, it doesn't look very special from outside. It's an old house, but for heaven's sake, I don't think it's very pretty and particularly beautiful. It is not. No, there are better things.
You know, they say you should never judge a book by its cover. And perhaps the same should be said about not judging a house by its exterior. Because who would have known that here at the back lies such an architectural gem?
We have just one more home to see before we find out which is the final house on the shortlist.
This looks effortless.
It certainly wasn't.
Then we'll discover who the overall winner is of House of the Year 2018.
Oh, I do love that. I mean, it just tells you, doesn't it, something of the history of how the building was put together. Of course, so often we end up covering stuff like this up with paint and plaster and decoration, but it is good to see a bit of it now and again. And I do mean a bit. You know, you can all show a bit of leg, but the older you get, the wiser it is to cover it up.
Our last finely crafted home is showing more than just a little leg in a quiet corner of East London, as Damien has discovered. This is the maker's house. It has daring flashes of plywood and naked steel supports on the outside. Inside, there are acres of exposed joists that run through the ground floor from the living room down to the kitchen and through the whole upstairs too. This house puts the materials it's made with on show. Set over 4 floors, the maker's house has a split-level living room and a kitchen at lower ground level. On the first floor, there are 2 bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms and 2 more bedrooms on the second floor. Oh, and there's a cinema room in the basement. The architects who made the marvellously eccentric maker's house are the husband and wife team of Sophie Goldhill and David Liddicote.
Hi.
Hi, Damien.
Sophie, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi. David, good to meet you.
Yeah.
The first thing that strikes you is the materials. This great big steel column and the bronze elements that are coursing through the brickwork. What was the thought process behind that?
I think we want to feel as though you could look at any given part and realise how it was made. You can see every process and every bit of work that's gone into it.
And we're stood here looking at this wonderful house, and I can't help but overhear the seashells crunching underneath my feet.
Yeah.
Where most people would have normally put gravel or slate down.
It's a totally incongruous thing, isn't it?
We just sort of saw them piled up and wondered, could we use them?
Wow.
And you can. I think they're a really nice addition to the house.
If you think seashells are out there...
Oh, this space is incredible.
The inside is a madcap collection of exposed, finely crafted materials. Long Danish bricks have been combined with everyday curbstones. Structural braces are exposed like decorative tracery. And the majestic steel frame is celebrated.
This looks effortless.
It certainly wasn't.
Every single piece was a slightly different size. There's nothing really sort of standard about how any part of it was put together. Everything had to be square and true and straight. So we had to spend a long time strapping up the frame, hitting it with sledgehammers. Yeah.
We were working 10-hour days on site, going back and drawing in the evening, and I think it was extremely stressful and very all-consuming.
But their sweat and grind wasn't lost on the judges, who praised the house for the exposed materials and sheer inventiveness. Nowhere better seen than in the living room, where Sophie and David installed a giant net to stop people falling down the stairs to the basement.
I think it's something like 25 quid.
£25 for a whole balustrade in a house like this is not bad going, is it? Does it work? Is it safe?
Yeah, have a go.
Have a go?
Yeah.
One way to find out.
It's quite unnerving, isn't it? Yeah. I love the fact that it's got that little bit of bounce to it as well.
Yeah.
It's a really fun idea.
It's a great place to lean against when you've had a few drinks at a party.
Yeah.
So.
Wake up in the morning.
Exactly, still pinned in place.
Yeah.
The giant bargain balustrade was originally going to be glass, but Sophie and David changed their minds. They adjusted lots of things as they went along, moving windows, enlarging roof lights, and supersizing the patio doors.
How much changing did you do? How much tweaking was there? How much, could we just...
There was a lot of tweaking, and I think it was continuous every day.
We were just changing things as frequently as we could.
Which can't have gone down well with everyone on site.
You must have been pulling your hair out at some point.
Yeah, almost constantly. Yeah, it's daily. I'm not bored by the end of it, actually.
Did you ever get design changes through and you were just like, why?
Well, I think most of the time you're kind of presented with the headache of how to actually kind of make it happen and kind of corral everybody to do it as well, which is maybe slightly more difficult.
Not that it's ever easy to wrangle a new building in dense built-up areas like this. To squeeze their house into its tight space, Sophie and David angled the roof so as not to block their neighbour's light. And to cover their giant mansard half roof, they needed a flexible material, zinc. It comes on a roll. It can be cut to any length, crimped and shaped to the building.
The fact that it's only a few millimetres thick and it's quite malleable means you can bend it into different shapes and design something that does appear kind of almost sort of impossibly light.
The zinc roof was one of the most expensive components, but by doing a lot of the work themselves, Sophie and David were able to save money. On the first floor, they've reused and restored an old wooden parquet floor from an old bus depot. It arrived looking very old.
Every single block was covered in bitumen from when it was glued down in its previous life, and that involved heating up each one by one and scraping off the back, which the first few seems like a good idea, but once you've done 40,000 of them or whatever it was...
We sort of had a target of getting through 3 boxes a night, so and that equated to about...
We weren't going out much at that time.
6 bottles of beer could get us through.
When you tell that story now, you can't help but look at this floor and see the love and patience that's gone into it.
There's a lot of love and a lot of patience that gone into it, so...
I think Sophie and David have crafted a breathtaking piece of architecture here, one they were planning to live in. However, once they were expecting their second child, they decided to leave London and put the house up for sale, which sold quickly to Abhishek and Valentina after just 6 weeks on the market.
You're looking at this incredible space that had wonderful materials that made me feel really comfortable immediately.
The fact that it feels a bit raw is what we like. And as soon as we came in, we're like, love it.
Making it up as you go along isn't usually the recipe for success when you're doing your own home. But David and Sophie's approach has produced something brilliant, extraordinary even. A house that's innovative, beautifully crafted, and an absolute delight.
So, that's the last of our homes that delight in materials and craftsmanship. We've seen Berkshire House, a painstakingly built family home that's here to last. Number 37, a little black number, larch-clad and crafted on a ludicrously small budget. Oatlands, a modern extension bursting out the back of a 1930s Suburban semi. And then there's the Maker's House, a masterpiece of inventive design. 4 beautifully crafted homes, but which one of them do the RIBA judges think worthy of a place on the shortlist? Takero Shimazaki, head of the judging panel, has the verdict.
So which of the projects have you shortlisted?
So it's the Maker's House.
Right, yeah.
What we found really interesting is this kind of bespokeness of it all, and that everything was an experiment. Every bit of detail is actually unusual, quite unique. I thought that combination was brave, and it's somewhat unusual today, where we do see a lot of bog standard boxes. What's exciting about this is the unexpectedness of materials appearing. So you've got this kind of red post as you enter, this kind of slim brickwork, the metal roofing. There's a lot to cope with.
Yeah, but a modicum of discipline in there at the same time.
No, very well managed.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Gosh,
yeah. That's really cool, yeah. Well, there's some amazing buildings on the list as well, so that's a really
it's a real privilege.
big privilege, yeah.
Wow, gobsmacked, I think.
So Maker's House, with its exposed materials and rather daring construction, is the last of our homes to make it onto the shortlist of 7. But only one can be crowned House of the Year 2018.
7 diverse houses from all over the country, all of them magical and remarkable. But which one of these homes on the shortlist will be the winner?
You're probably wondering what makes a winning house. Is it the hard work, the grit and determination that went into making it? Is it the ingenuity of the design, the ambition of the project? Or is it the beauty of how the building sits in its surroundings? In fact, does it enhance even the place where it is? Well, the answer, of course, is all of these.
Last year's winner, Caring Wood, responded to its context and surroundings exceptionally, not least with 150,000 locally made clay tiles. It was a tribute to the Kentish Oast House, designed by James MacDonald Wright with Niall Maxwell.
The significant qualities are its craftsmanship, its use of local materials, and its ability to accommodate 3 generations of the same family.
And the family who commissioned the house and live in it are James's own. Each part of the extended family have their own private corner Oast House that they can come together in the communal spaces. That's the theory anyway.
The children don't really care too much where they sleep, so they'll completely ignore, the fact that, there are different families and different oasts. The children will sort of charge into the bedroom without any concern whatsoever. But of course, the adults, you're sort of, tapping on doors to shout and see if anyone's there.
Last year's RIBA jury liked the craftsmanship of Caring Wood and how well it sat in its landscape and setting. A landscape and setting that is being slowly enriched by the estate manager, Patrick Wynyard-Hussey.
Patrick's been busy planting how many trees?
Well, I think this winter we planted 2,500 more trees to try and get the original landscape to sort of wrap back round the house. We just don't want it to look like it's a house which has just landed in the middle of Kent.
It doesn't. It looks like it's set seed and grown here. Caring Wood is an inventive, crafted home, highly responsive to where it is, and it's eco-friendly. It's locally grown, organic architecture. That's what made it 2017's winner. So who will scoop the grand prize this year? Could it be Red House, a cheeky little number that's a marvel of intricate layout at the end of the terrace? Or Lochside House, the off-grid crofter's cottage in far-flung Scotland? It might be Coastal House in Devon, reborn from a tired old wreck. Or the geometrical and powerful pheasants on the banks of the Thames. Old Shed New House might win for its mix of the agricultural and fantastical. But so might Vex, a magical tower of wavering ellipses. Or it could be the Maker's House, a playful, ingenious experiment in exposed materials.
So, no easy task to pick a winner from this range of remarkable buildings. That difficult job falls to the panel of judges.
I'm looking for a project that does something different.
You're trying to measure apples against pears and sometimes turnips.
It's getting trickier and trickier the more houses we see, yes.
It's always really difficult to choose, so we've got a very difficult task ahead of us.
So the winner of the 2018 House of the Year is by the coast. I mean, that doesn't really mean much, does it? It could be anywhere. It could be in Wales, Cornwall, the Lake District, North Yorkshire.
But if you're thinking it's in the north of the country, you're getting warmer. In the very remotest part of Scotland, tucked against a promontory by the side of a sea loch, is the winner, Lochside. One modest, exquisite home which looks like 3 old fishermen's huts, stitched quietly into its setting. It was commissioned by its owner Michel and designed by the architect Tom Miller. Together, they built an off-grid, low-impact house, gently rooted into place.
Hi.
Michelle, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Tom, how are you?
Hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah, and you. And look, first of all, congratulations to you both.
Thank you very, very much.
I mean, wonderful news, I think, and a really worthy winner.
Thank you.
You know,
very
it's really
surprised.
exciting. It's not a big, obvious project, this one, so it's lovely that they kind of noticed and saw what we were trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you didn't set out to commission an award-winning piece of architecture. You just wanted a house.
I just wanted
that was
somewhere that I loved. I was more concerned with getting it right than just brushing it, really.
Well, slow cook, and maybe all the better for it.
I remember getting that email through with a photograph of a piece of seaweed and a mussel shell saying, these are the colours for the roof light and the chimney. Michelle was spending time here, living it, looking at colours, looking at the stuff around her, looking at the textures and working that into the building.
That slow cook research paid off. This building seems so charmingly at one with its place. It was even built from local materials by local people. It doesn't shout, but it smiles. It asks you politely to quietly listen to it and to quietly enjoy the sequence of spaces that unfold.
So you pass from one box to another almost, from one building into another.
Yeah.
But all the time with these cutaway views back to the beginning. What I like is you stood up there and you get that glimpse of the view of the loch. But when you get down here, as you come down, it opens up. And I guess, actually, as you sit, yes.
Yeah. And actually, if you lie down with your head on the arm, it's even better.
There's the mountain.
Yeah.
And this house welcomes connections to the landscape at every opportunity.
Oh, heavens. Oh, what a delightful room. And that view, another one.
You also get the lovely view up from the bed into the treetops.
The squirrel view, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself stopping still in the building to just look out?
Yeah, absolutely. I just enjoy looking at all the different views you get through and out, yeah.
These views were hard won, though, like everything with this house. Lochside took 2 years to build, in the most brutal of conditions. Sub-zero temperatures, gale-force winds and lashing Scottish rain. Lovely. In such an extreme climate as this, small wonder that Tom suggested weatherproofing the Scottish larch cladding by charring it.
I was a bit worried that it would be too black when Tom suggested charring it. I didn't want it to be too ominous and dark, but actually it just made it sink into the landscape and then it's kind of just coming out of it a little
Out
bit.
of black integrated. It's sort of weathering the right way.
That's right.
Looking at the roof, for example, that was all black when it went on.
It
but that's all
was,
silvered.
yeah.
On the sides of the house, the cladding has been mounted onto agricultural storm doors to shield the windows.
These slide across.
Are they easy to
doing-
slide?
Yes.
There's
yeah.
no handle.
No, they just slide.
Oh, they don't need it really, do you? No.
No.
That's nice.
So it's
That's
also
lovely.
effectively the curtains.
So that's your bedroom in there with an external curtain?
That's right, yeah. But you can see how much more charred underneath.
Oh,
it is
yeah,
as well.
yeah. This was, I get you, yeah.
Michelle can close this house down at night in winter and feel fully protected and cocooned. In summer, she can open the place up, entertain and use the terraces.
It's lovely to have the big deck out there for drinkies. Thing is, it's doing so much more. That wall, that heavy masonry wall with those little returns, is an almost exact reproduction of the plan of this room. It's pushed out to suggest that there's much more space, that the building itself has somehow kind of pushed out into the landscape. It's not a gin and tonic deck, it's a Scotch and saltwater deck.
Salty, poetic, quiet, and a little rough around the edges, and so utterly beautiful for it. A crofter's cottage for the modern age, which bewitched the judges chaired by Takeru Shimazaki.
So I'm very curious to know why this project won.
It's highly ambitious, but it's not obsessive in the sense that it's not a beautiful object for the sake of it. There's this incredible relationship between the dining space and the sunken living space and the woods and the lake.
It's impossible to separate it, isn't it, from the quality of the place?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a down-to-earth, literally down-to-earth project.
It was this love of the remarkable place that drove Michelle to build Lochside.
I wanted to do something modern and something different, but at the same time it was important that it was right for the landscape. It's gratifying to feel that people appreciate what we've tried to do.
It would have been so easy, wouldn't it, to have built a big bling thing on this site. But then, of course, it wouldn't have won. As Tom says, this building has been tailored to its site. It's been stitched and woven, seamed into the tapestry of this place, and it is so much the better for it. It's the kind of architecture that we can all easily love, the kind of architecture we can all easily learn from. And it's actually a way of building that we in Britain are getting really very good at.